That summer, I was 12 years old. I was still carefree. The perfect heir came to my hometown, Whitehall, with his grandfather. An elderly man spoke gently. Children, say hello to each other. A blonde girl smiled brightly. Hello, my name is Rennie Hatherland. She looked at him expectantly. And you? Alexander answered without expression. Alexander somber. We were about the same age, and we quickly became close. Rennie ran after Alexander. Come play with me. Alexander roughly shook her off. Go away. Every summer, Alexander would come all the way from Calabar and stay until the end of the holidays. After spending several summers together, we became even closer. Holding a little pig plushie, Rennie excitedly showed it to Alexander. Look, Sasha, this is our baby. Alexander suddenly leaned in and took a bite out of the ice cream in Rennie's hand. At the seaside under the night sky, the two sat side by side. Moonlight spread a silver path across the water. Rennie hugged her arms, maybe because it's night, but it feels a little cold. Alexander turned and draped his coat over her shoulders. Rennie looked up in surprise. In those deep blue eyes, Alexander gazed at her, the corner of his lips lifting into an unreadable smile. That boy became my first love. In the summer when I turned 16, I lost contact with Alexander. A newspaper headline blazed across the page, Blair Somber dead. Rennie's pupils shrank. Blair Somber was Alexander's mother. To comfort him, I sent letter after letter, but they all vanished like stones sinking into the sea. No reply ever came. That winter, a massive fire broke out at Somber Manor. Many people died. When I heard the terrible news, I set out for Calabar to see Alexander. Snow fell thickly as Rennie stood alone outside the iron gates of Somber Manor, frozen to the bone. Through the cold iron bars, she urgently asked the manor's butler, Is Sasha all right? Is he safe? Did he receive my letters? The butler answered expressionlessly, Miss, young Master Alexander is unharmed, but he does not wish to see you now. This is his reply. The butler handed over a letter sealed with wax. Trembling, Rennie took it and tore it open. The handwriting was icy and cutting. Don't come looking for me again. Get lost. I've had enough of you. And just like that, my first love came to an end. 8 years later, the Hatherland barony was bathed in sunshine. Rennie stood outside the house, gently urging the children, hurry and finish eating. You need to get to school. She was now the head of the Hatherland Baron's household. At the dining table, Vienna pointed at Maurice and angrily complained. Maurice started it first. Maurice scoffed. That's because you did something stupid. Vienna exploded at once. What? Are you asking to die? Maurice stuck out his tongue. No thanks. He jumped down from his chair, and Vienna chased after him. If I catch you, you're dead. Rennie pressed a hand to her forehead. Vienna, Maurice, I said no running during meals. Rennie called out to the other children, and the rest of you, stop just watching and finish your food. The children gasped. Wow, Maurice is so fast. Careful, the plates. Rennie's patience hit its limit. There was no helping it. Rennie took a deep breath, her voice instantly turning stern. Any child who doesn't finish eating within 10 minutes and ends up late for school will lose the right to have apple pie tomorrow. The children froze. No, not my apple pie. I swear, I'm almost done. I'm done eating. The children rushed out of the dining room like a gust of wind, leaving chaos behind. Rennie let out a weary sigh. Every morning felt like a battle. She picked up a rag covered in crumbs and began cleaning up the mess. It had been 3 years since Baron Hatherland's house had been turned into an orphanage. My grandfather died in the war. I inherited his title and brought the war orphans of Whitehall back to the estate. My uncle, who came from the monastery to help, once said this to me. Pointing at my nose, he said sternly, Rennie, life is a cycle. Even if things are hard for us right now, we cannot turn a blind eye to innocent children who lost their families overnight. Knowing what those children had gone through, I simply couldn't refuse. I, who had lost my parents at a young age, understood their feelings better than anyone. But the result was a mountain of ruinous bills. Stacks of unpaid receipts kept piling up, and the source of this endless debt, Roy, clasped his hands together and said apologetically, I'm sorry, Rennie. Oh goodness, I'm really, truly sorry. That man, Bill Xander, said he'd give us a 60% discount. So Rennie slammed her hand on the table. Uncle, she was furious. Bill Xander always talks about a 60% discount. We still haven't paid for the desks from last time, and now you bought a blackboard too? What else? 200 boxes of chalk. Rennie's voice trembled with anger. The unpaid bills have already exceeded the estate's annual budget. What exactly are you planning to do? Roy lowered his head. Rennie, I have nothing to say. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I am truly sorry. Yes, my uncle really was a good man, kind, innocent, and utterly clueless about how the world worked. Roy racked his brains. Look, I'll find a way to get the money, even if I have to sell my pens and clothes. It was precisely that innocence that made me suffocate. Rennie's fingers traced the bills. 2 months ago, we already sold part of our land to raise money. If this keeps up, we'll soon be out on the streets. Never mind running the orphanage. Rennie made up her mind and looked up. Uncle. Roy was startled by her sudden seriousness. Her tone softened. Before I return, take care of these bills. I'll forgive you this time. Roy stammered. In now. Then he quickly came to his senses. Oh, yes, of course. I'll handle it right away. Roy forced a smile onto his face. Leave it to me, my dear niece. Rennie turned and left, disappearing through the door. Seagulls circled across the blue sky, crying sharply. Her eyes were vacant as she sat alone by the sea, staring at the crashing waves. When had it all started? Her thoughts drifted far away, the wind stirring her long golden hair. Whenever I'm troubled, I come to see the sea. Times may change, but the sea of Whitehall never does. Sitting here felt like going back to the past, back to that carefree childhood. Alexander pinned Rennie beneath him on the sand. Sunlight poured over the beach, casting their overlapping shadows. Her cheeks flushed red as she stared up at him. A flicker of panic flashed in Rennie's eyes. In Alexander's vivid blue gaze, her reflection was perfectly clear. A bitter smile touched Rennie's lips. Pull yourself together, Rennie Hatherland. This isn't the time to be reminiscing about your first love. Next month, I won't even have a penny left for the orphanage. What am I supposed to do? Footsteps sounded on the sand, drawing nearer. A figure stopped behind her, casting a shadow over her. A low voice spoke. Hello, Rennie. Rennie whirled around. You? Alexander stood there, a faint smile on his lips. Long time no see. I've heard about your situation. The rumors say Baron Hatherland's territory has fallen on hard times. His gaze sharpened. So I've been thinking. Alexander smiled faintly. Would you marry me? Then he added, you won't regret it. Rennie was utterly stunned. What? Alexander Somber, the head of the Somber Marquis family, president of the Somber Company, and Calabar's most outstanding figure. But he had not been born that way. He inherited the title at 12, went to war at 18, and fought until it ended. For 3 whole years, it was said that on the battlefield, he heard of an island covered in glittering jewels. As soon as the war ended, Alexander set sail to find it. Thanks to the diamonds from that island, he rose in one leap to become a globally acknowledged tycoon. With his immense wealth, he poured himself into the automobile industry and successfully developed the world's finest luxury car, the Conqueror. Now, he had become one of Her Majesty the Queen's favorites. A man like that came to me out of nowhere and proposed such a ridiculous marriage. Of course, I accepted the offer, which came with a price. Will you marry me? It has now been 2 years since we entered a contract marriage. A contract marriage meant to avoid being matched by the Queen. Rennie's gaze was steady. To prove it was only a contract, she added, we have never shared bed. Our relationship isn't a good one. The wedding portrait on the wall looks especially cold. He travels constantly, and when we're at home, we hardly see each other. Why did he choose me back then? It doesn't matter anymore. Soon it will all end. These exhausting 2 years. Our contract marriage is about to end. The divorce papers lie quietly on the table. The end of a contract marriage. An elderly woman lay in bed. Rennie called softly, grandmother. It's me, Rennie. Rennie gripped the documents in her hand and quickly entered the bedroom. The old woman sat up and beckoned warmly. Oh, Rennie, dear, come sit here. This was Alexander's grandmother, Josie Somber. Rennie sat by the bed. Josie asked with concern, how is your leg? I heard you were hurt in the study yesterday. Rennie smiled in reply. Don't worry. A few days of rest, and I'll be fine. Josie suddenly leaned in. By the way, Rennie, why is there dust on your face? She reached out and brushed the dust from Rennie's cheek. Have you been rolling around on the floor? Rennie looked a little embarrassed. No, I was just looking for this in the study. Josie's gaze sharpened. Rennie took out a photograph. Is this what you were looking for yesterday? The photo showed a family portrait. Your family photo. Josie's gaze turned meaningful. Why were you looking for this? Rennie forced a smile. Josie stared at the photograph, momentarily lost in thought. Yes, I really want to find it. Thank goodness. Thank you, Rennie. Then Josie gazed at the photo again. Thank you, really. Looking at her, Rennie asked, what kind of man was your husband? Josie's gaze drifted into the distance. Gunther. Gunther. She looked at an old smiling picture. He looked like a great naval officer. He had a kind and wise soul. Then she looked at another photograph, one of Gunther holding a young Alexander. He loved Alexander very much too. Josie's eyes softened. Come to think of it, that child has resembled his grandfather ever since he was little. Looking at him now is like seeing Gunther in his youth. If he were still alive, he would certainly be proud of Alexander. Rennie's gaze darkened. When I was 12, Grandpa Gunther, my grandfather's close friend, died in a carriage accident. Alexander had been especially close to him. After the accident, he struggled for a long time. Rennie, having you by his side has meant more to me than you can know. I've always been grateful to you. To show my gratitude, I want to give you a gift. Josie opened a box. Inside was a necklace. Rennie looked surprised. A necklace, Josie explained. This is a treasured heirloom passed down in our family for generations. It has a mysterious power. It can grant one wish in the wearer's lifetime. I made a wish on it once, and it came true. Now I think it's time to pass it on to you. Rennie's lips parted. Grandmother, we're getting divorced. Josie's expression froze. Divorced? So suddenly? Why? Did Alexander do something wrong? Josie grabbed Rennie's arm and shook her anxiously. No, it's not like that. Rennie tried to explain. We're just incompatible. I'm not suited for marriage, and I'm not suited to life in Calabar. After the divorce, I plan to return to my hometown, so I can't accept something this valuable. But Josie's eyes only grew more determined. That makes me want to give you this necklace even more. Josie smiled. The world is not always kind. Having something like this may bring you some comfort. I'm truly looking forward to seeing what kind of wish you'll make with it. Rennie sat alone in the bathtub. The ruby on the necklace glowed faintly against her chest. One wish. What should I wish for? Good health? A prosperous family? Success in business? Or perhaps? Rennie's eyes turned deep and complicated. She closed her eyes, returned to the past. Alexander held something out to her. A gift for you. He placed a white flower crown on Rennie's head. Rennie blinked in confusion. What is this? A necklace. Alexander, did you make it yourself? Why? Alexander gazed at her. Because you said you want a necklace. There isn't a proper jeweler here, so I made this for now. He settled the flower crown on her head. I'll buy you a better one later. Rennie's cheeks flushed crimson. Alexander smiled gently. Their eyes met. The air seemed to freeze, and everything around them fell silent. Rennie clasped her hands together. Necklace, please let Alexander be happy. Then she jolted in surprise. I must be crazy. This is not the time to worry about the most successful man in the world. Rennie picked up the necklace. Necklace, could you forget my last wish? My real wish is to become rich. If possible, as rich as Alexander Somber. The kittens gathered around Rennie, meowing nonstop. Rennie crouched down. Babies, why are you crying? Are you hungry? She stroked the cats. Wait, I'll go get treats right away. Rennie stepped out of the bathroom with the cats following close behind. She opened the cupboard. What snack should I give you today? Fish or chicken? A voice rang out. Hello, my wife. Rennie spun around. Alexander. At that familiar voice, her heart skipped a beat. There he was, 48 days before the contract ended. Rennie sat crouched on the floor, surrounded by cats, looking up at the man before her. Alexander, holding a wine glass. Alexander curved his lips in a faint smile. Long time no see. My husband had come home. Rennie froze in place, her voice trembling slightly. Why are you here? Alexander's gaze remained calm. I came home. Is there something wrong with that? Rennie's eyes shifted. When you come back from business trips, you usually go straight to the office. Alexander looked at her. Today I changed my mind. He stepped forward and reached out. But, Rennie, Alexander bent down, his fingers brushing her collarbone. What happened to the scar on your collarbone? Rennie's pupils contracted. She hurriedly covered her neckline. Her eyes darted away. I was accidentally scratched by a cat. Alexander pressed on. Did you put medicine on it? Rennie lowered her head to avoid his eyes. It's fine. A little wound like this doesn't need treatment. Alexander's tone allowed no argument. It does. Your skin marks easily. Even the slightest redness or swelling is obvious. Rennie's heart tightened. What's wrong with him? Why is he acting like this? Normally, he would never care about something like this. Usually, Alexander would speak coldly. Even if we're only a fake couple, as long as you bear the somber name, don't disgrace it. Rennie had found it unbelievable. A scratch would disgrace the somber name? Alexander would explain. You go around showing injuries like that. People will say the somber family is cold and heartless, that they don't even care for an injured wife. You should treat it quickly instead of stubbornly enduring it. Just as I guarantee that you will suffer no losses in this arrangement, you should not cause any losses for me either. That was the sort of thing he usually said. Rennie finally spoke. Are you drunk? Alexander denied it immediately. Of course not, Rennie demanded. Then why are you being so strange? Alexander asked back. What did I do? Rennie looked him straight in the eye. Alexander Somber, stop pretending. Just act like you normally do. What on earth was wrong with him today? It was making her uneasy. Alexander raised a brow. What exactly am I like in your eyes? Rennie blurted out, someone who makes people very uncomfortable. The corner of Alexander's mouth lifted, amusement flickering in his eyes. Rennie, he suddenly stepped forward. Rennie's body stiffened. Alexander abruptly swept her up into his arms. Rennie cried out, W, what are you doing? Carrying her. Alexander turned away. You said I make you uncomfortable. I'm only trying to meet your expectations. Rennie struggled in his arms. Are you crazy? Put me down. Alexander looked down at her. Rennie, if you keep thrashing around like this, your robe will come undone. Of course, I don't mind. Rennie stopped struggling and warned him sharply, stop fooling around. Put me down right now. And don't do this again. Alexander walked to the wardrobe and gently set her on top of it. He asked why. Rennie's cheeks reddened. Because it's childish. It's not funny at all. Alexander let out a soft laugh. Is that so? He had put Rennie on top of the wardrobe. Then I'll think about it. Rennie glared at him. Are you insane? Why are you doing this? Alexander smiled. Do you want to come down? He held out a hand. Standing below the wardrobe, Alexander opened his arms. Rennie turned her face away. Call someone else to help me. You mean not me? Alexander raised a brow. So your husband isn't good enough, but anyone else is? Rennie refused to back down. Anyone is better than you. If you won't call someone, then get me a chair. Alexander asked in return. Just like that? No price. Rennie's legs dangled in the air as she asked warily, what do you want? Alexander gazed at her, his eyes gentle. I missed you, darling. Then Alexander ordered, say it. Rennie looked appalled. Did you hit your head on your business trip? Alexander chuckled. I'm only doing my duty. The duty that makes you so furious. Why don't you like it now? Rennie closed her eyes. Stop talking. How can you say things like that? You can't even say them yourself, so why force someone else to? Darling, Alexander suddenly said, I missed you so much. Rennie's eyes flew open, utterly bewildered. My love, stop right there. Rennie cut him off sharply. Don't say another word. Rennie lifted her hand and covered his face. 2 years of marriage. We had been indifferent to each other. In public, we played the loving couple. In private, we were little better than strangers. When we did happen to meet, we only clashed as though we hated each other. But now, the man who had disappeared for 3 months over our divorce was looking at me like that. He must have taken the wrong medicine. Or perhaps he was plotting something again. Whatever was going on in his head, I had no intention of letting him lead me around by the nose again. Rennie's fingers brushed over her wedding ring. She lowered her eyes to her dangling feet. If I jump from here, I'll probably only hurt my knees. She jumped, landing steadily. She saw Alexander's pupil shrink. He watched helplessly as Rennie fell, then lost his balance and toppled backward. With a dull thud, he hit the floor hard, Rennie landing on top of him. Rennie hurriedly pushed herself up. Alexander asked urgently, Rennie, are you all right? Rennie looked up. I'm Fine. Her words stopped abruptly. Their eyes met. Their breaths tangled. Rennie's golden hair spilled down over Alexander's face. Time seemed to stop. Rennie sprang up at once. Oh God, Alexander, I didn't mean to. Lying on the floor, Alexander stared at her. There was no blame in his eyes. Rennie panicked. Alexander spoke softly. Rennie, are you all right? I'm Fine. Rennie's voice was faint. Then she suddenly realized something. She covered her own mouth and explained in a fluster. And no, this was just an accident, right? Just an accident. Our lips didn't touch, right? We only almost bumped into each other. That's all. She kept a hand over her mouth. Oh, nothing happened. Alexander gazed at her. Rennie, he seemed about to say something. Rennie shot to her feet. Anyway, I'm sorry. She turned and hurried away. See you later, then. Alexander remained seated on the floor. Watching the direction she left, he slowly smiled. The butler approached. Sir, your car is ready. A black automobile was parked outside. Alexander walked to it, and the butler opened the door for him. Alexander looked back, his gaze sweeping toward the second-floor window. The butler noticed his pause and asked with concern, Is something wrong? Alexander withdrew his gaze. No. He got into the car. Let's go. Rennie stood by the window, watching Alexander's car drive away. She lifted the curtain, her expression complicated. She remembered what had just happened. They had been so close, their breaths entwined. She suddenly covered her mouth, her cheeks reddening. Alexander lying on the floor, those blue eyes of his, deep as the sea. Rennie's fingertips brushed her lips as though his warmth still lingered there. Her heartbeat raced and refused to calm down. Her cheeks burned. Covering her face with both hands, she muttered, I'm going crazy. Rose rushed in. Madam, I heard you were hurt. Are you all right? Holding a tube of ointment, Rose said, Let me apply some medicine. Please sit down. They sat on the sofa, and Rose carefully treated the wound. Rennie asked softly, Did Alexander go to the office? Rose answered, Yes. He said he might not be back for a few days. It seems he's terribly busy preparing for the car exhibition. After the somber luxury car, the Generous, was selected by the royal family, it became a huge success. Alexander immediately announced plans for the affordable model, the Generous W. The move sparked a worldwide investment frenzy and buying rush. An unprecedented automobile exhibition was already underway as well. Because of that, for the past 6 months, Alexander's schedule had been brutally full. We had hardly seen each other. Why now of all times? Our contract is about to expire, and we haven't even properly discussed the divorce yet. Rose put away the ointment. There, madam. Please be careful not to aggravate the wound. Master was very worried about you. Rennie looked surprised. Alexander, Rose nodded firmly. Yes, he specifically told me to make sure I treated your wound properly. Every time I see you, madam, I believe Master truly loves you. Rennie stiffened at that and turned her eyes to the window. A cold smile touched her lips. What a remarkable actor. His performance deserved an award. Once we're divorced, I'll never have to watch this garbage performance again. Rennie looked out the window. Thank goodness. That's for the best. Her eyes sharpened. There was another advantage to divorce. Footsteps sounded, and a woman walked into the room. I heard your husband came by earlier. Is that true? Rennie's gaze turned cold. After the divorce, I'll finally be rid of that hateful Nina Somber too. Rennie sat on the sofa while Nina stood in front of her, demanding, "Why aren't you answering me?" I asked whether Alexander came by. Rennie looked at her coldly. Shouldn't you apologize for barging in first? Nina was unfazed. You weren't asleep. What difference does it make? Rennie rose to her feet. Did you bring that up just to humiliate me? Nina folded her arms across her chest. Being this rude to your brother's wife only exposes your country upbringing and lack of breeding. I really don't understand how Alexander could have taken a liking to someone like you. Rennie looked at her coldly. Sorry, but I wasn't the one who proposed. Alexander was. And as for upbringing, you're hardly in a position to criticize me. Nina flew into a rage. What did you just say? Rennie's thoughts returned to the past. Nina was Alexander's half-sister, Sasha's. No, before Alexander had even turned 15, the Marchioness Somber died. Only 3 months later, the Marquis married a commoner seamstress. The seamstress's daughter was Nina. When we were 16, a fire broke out at Somber Manor. Nina suffered severe burns on her back, and her lungs were permanently damaged. Later, it was discovered that the fire had been caused by Alexander's mistake. To take responsibility, Alexander promised that even after the Marquis died, he would continue supporting Maggie and Nina financially. Unlike Maggie, who left the manor, Nina stayed behind. She was obsessively attached to Alexander and openly hostile toward me. Was it because she could not accept that the brother who should have been taking care of her had created a new family? I tried to understand and tolerate all her little schemes, but it had been almost 2 years. I'd had enough. Rennie took a deep breath. Fine, Nina, your brother was here. He went straight to the office. Leaning closer, she added, if you want to throw a tantrum, go make a scene at the Somber Company. Though I doubt Alexander would pay any attention to you at all. Nina trembled with rage. You're nothing but a bed warmer. Don't act so high and mighty. Nina spun around and stormed out. Rennie watched her expressionlessly as Rose stepped forward. Madam, are you all right? Rennie regained her calm. I'm Fine. Don't worry. Rose, you should go and rest too. Rose bowed and withdrew. Yes, madam. If you need anything, please call for me at any time. Night fell over the manor. In the corridor, Andrea, the head housekeeper of Somber Manor, said to the estate manager beside her, Gabriel, move Miss Nina's room to the 3rd floor tomorrow. Gabriel looked puzzled. Why? Did something happen? Andrea explained, while I was away, that young lady had another huge fight with Madam. She suddenly claimed to be allergic to cats and kept pestering Madam to send them away. Gabriel frowned. Allergic to cats? She never had that before. How could it suddenly appear? Andrea's eyes sharpened. Exactly. Doesn't it sound suspicious? I think we should consult an expert. Gabriel suddenly raised a hand. Shoo! The two of them pressed themselves against the door to listen. Someone lowered their voice. Then what about this amount? Still not enough? Fine. Even so, could you help me a little? Think about it. Then I'll think about it. Gabriel shouted angrily. Who's there? Holding oil lamps, Gabriel and Andrea demanded, What are you doing here this late? Footsteps echoed down the empty corridor. Gabriel and Andrea's faces grew grim as they came to a halt. Andrea looked at Gabriel. Should we search room by room? Gabriel shook his head. Let go this time. Paying for someone to switch shifts isn't unusual among the servants. We can't wake everyone up over something like this. Andrea stopped walking. That voice sounded a little familiar. The next day, Rennie supported Josie as they strolled through the garden. Grandmother, is your leg feeling better? Josie smiled and replied, Much better. I'm walking quite steadily now. Really? Rennie said lightly. Then you'll be running marathons soon. Josie laughed. You silly child, what a thing to say. Then she changed the subject. By the way, Rennie, Alexander, he still hasn't come back since going to the office yesterday? A trace of helplessness crossed Rennie's face. No, not yet. He works tirelessly, as if he never gets tired. He even squeezes in time to exercise when he rests. Sometimes we all wonder whether he's even human. Josie's eyes were full of affection. Oh, I'm quite sure he is. I still remember the day he was born. As Josie reminisced, she added, fortunately, he didn't grow a tail or scales. She and Rennie exchanged a smile, though he's a bit like a monkey. A man's voice came from nearby. Ladies, footsteps approached from a distance. Alexander walked over. I hope you weren't saying all that while I was away. Rennie turned around. Alexander. Josie looked at him too. You're back. Alexander came to stand before them. Yes, grandmother. Josie sized him up. But what are you wearing? Why is your hair wet? Alexander ran a hand through his damp hair. This is what someone who worked through the night and took a quick wash in the morning looks like. He struck a pose. Well, do I look cool? Josie laughed and teased. Yes, like the most fashionable vagrant in the world. Alexander smiled back. Then I must be the richest vagrant in the world. He slipped an arm around Rennie's shoulders. Grandmother, we'll be going now. There's something I need to discuss with Rennie. The warmth of his hand came through her clothes. Rennie stiffened slightly. Calmly, she moved his hand away and suggested, why don't we have breakfast together first? You must be hungry too. Alexander refused. No, I'm Fine. Then you keep grandmother company while eating. I'll wait in the room. You two go ahead. Josie rejected the suggestion. No, forget it. I'll walk more than usual today, so I'm a little tired. I'll go rest now. She turned to the housekeeper beside her. Andrea, help me back to my room. Andrea promptly stepped forward. Yes, madam. Alexander called out. Grandmother. Oh, Josie replied. Alexander announced. Workers will be coming next week. The annex is only a small project, so it won't take long. Josie asked curiously, a project? What kind? Alexander answered calmly, installing an elevator. Even when he was this busy, he still thought about grandmother's injury. After 2 years of marriage, I finally realized that Alexander deliberately kept his distance from her. Even though he showed polite humor and proper manners, he had never truly shared anything with her. Inside the office, Gabriel handed over a document. Young master, this is the installation contract for the annex elevator. Please sign at the bottom. Alexander picked up a pen, its tip gliding over the paper. Though he cared, he still kept his distance. On the surface, he always maintained a firm boundary. I couldn't understand it, but I had never asked why. That was a line a fake wife was not supposed to cross. Alexander walked beside Rennie. He said softly, please get some rest. Suddenly, Alexander took Rennie's hand, their fingers intertwining. Their hands clasped tightly as they walked down the corridor, the lights stretching their shadows long behind them. He held her hand all the way back to the house. Rennie looked at him, a trace of confusion rising in her heart. Why has he been touching me more since yesterday? He used to avoid even accidental contact. Something must have changed after that trip. What was it? Rennie reminded him softly. Alexander, no one is watching anymore. You can let go of my hand now. Alexander abruptly released her. He pressed a hand to his forehead. I'm too tired. I didn't notice. Rennie said, you really must be tired. Then she changed the subject. By the way, what did you want to talk about? You said there was something to discuss. Well, Alexander took an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. In 2 days, there's a banquet for Brighton Academy graduates at the Royal Palace. It's an event where you're expected to bring your spouse, so you'll have to come with me. Rennie took the envelope. In 2 days? So sudden. Alexander looked out the window. It was originally scheduled for the afternoon, but the weather forecast says it'll rain, so they moved it earlier. Rennie was confused. It's not a typhoon, just rain, and it's an indoor event. It should be fine. A smile curved Alexander's lips. I told them that if it rained, I wouldn't go. Rennie understood instantly. Brighton Academy, the most prestigious school in the world. Alexander's classmates were now high-ranking nobles and members of the royal family holding immense power. And because of a single remark from him, they had rearranged the entire event. I already knew Alexander was influential, but it was still astonishing. Seeing Alexander about to get into bed in his clothes, Rennie quickly called out, Alexander, no matter how tired you are, you shouldn't lie on the bed wearing a suit. Alexander turned to look at her, a wife nagging her husband. Rennie put her hands on her hips. Who was it that insisted we couldn't sleep in separate beds? Less talking. Go change. Alexander abruptly sat up. Rennie's gaze was instantly drawn to him as he began unbuttoning his shirt, exposing a firm chest. Rennie stared in shock. What are you doing? Alexander asked calmly. Didn't you tell me to change? What's the problem? He unfastened his belt. Rennie panicked. Are you insane? Why are you taking your clothes off here? At least put on pajamas. She turned and rushed toward the dressing room. Wait, I'll go get your pajamas. Alexander watched her hurried retreat. His eyes were blank with fatigue. Rennie came back carrying the pajamas. Alexander, here. Your pajamas. Hurry and put them on. Silence. He gave no reply at all. Rennie felt something was odd. Why wasn't he answering? She turned around. Alexander had already fallen asleep. Bare from the waist up, he breathed evenly and deeply under the light. Rennie froze in place. How could he just fall asleep like that? Rennie called softly, Alexander. He was sleeping so deeply, like a child. Looking at his sleeping face, Rennie sighed. There's really nothing I can do with him. She covered her mouth, her cheeks burning. He's not wearing anything. Rennie's face was blazing hot. He had taken everything off, even his undershirt. This is why I insisted on separate beds. Alexander set down his pen. Separate beds? Why? Rennie's tone had been firm. Because we're not a real married couple. Our prenuptial agreement is very clear. Only limited physical contact when necessary, and absolutely no sexual relationship. Alexander had argued. Sleeping in the same bed doesn't mean anything will happen. Why make such a fuss? Rennie hadn't backed down. Given what our relationship is, why should I have to feel uncomfortable sharing a bed with you? Alexander had cut her off. Rennie, his hand slammed heavily onto the table. His voice was cold. We must act as much like a real married couple as possible. That is part of our contract. Have you forgotten? He continued, so you need to get used to it. Besides, I'm rarely home at night anyway. I often travel for business, and sometimes I sleep in the office. What more do you want from me? But contrary to those words, throughout our marriage, Alexander always tried his best to come home to sleep. Rennie stared at the sleeping Alexander. If he was that tired, he could easily have rested in the office. Why'd he always come home? He even had a private room at the company. Rennie's expression grew complicated. She reached out a hand. Since our marriage, this was the first time I had looked at him sleeping from so close up. He looked almost the same as before. Still like that boy. He used to be so lovely. What on earth happened to him? Suddenly, a sharp cat's yowl split the silence. Rennie jumped. Two cats were chasing and wrestling through the room. One gray and white, one calico. Lowering her voice, Rennie scolded, Sonny, Lucky, don't make noise. She chased after the cats. Stop running around. Calm down already. Catching hold of them, Rennie pleaded, Please, you two, stop it. Alexander woke up and opened one eye. What is it? Rennie explained urgently. Sorry, Alexander. The cat got under the blanket. I'll get out right away. Just don't move. Renee's hand searched around under the blanket. Quit messing around. Come out already. Then he shouted, Got you. The little rascal. Renee's hand suddenly froze. Wait, this doesn't feel right. A cat doesn't feel like this. Alexander sat up, his voice low. That's not the cat. Renee froze stiff. What? Alexander's face turned bright red as he repeated. I said, that's not the cat. Renee's pupils contracted sharply. Could it be? She yanked her hand back as if she'd been electrocuted. Renee let out a scream and fell onto the floor. Alexander covered his face with one hand. The tips of his ears flushed red. A cat poked its head out from under the bed. Meow. The black cat glanced back once, not the least bit guilty. In the darkness, Alexander slowly opened his eyes. Sir, a childish voice called. Sir. Alexander jolted awake. He was sitting on a beach, his palms sunk deep into the sand. He looked around. This was the shore. Is this Whitehall? Alexander looked around blankly. Why am I here? That childish voice sounded again by his ear. Are you Mr. Alexander Chambord? Right. Alexander turned and saw a little blond boy with blue eyes. Alexander answered, Yes. Who are you? The boy introduced himself. My name is Hines. Do you know Renee Hatherland? A strange look flashed through Alexander's eyes. Of course I know her. We've known each other since we were little. We're close. How do you know her? Hines grinned. That's a secret. Alexander looked at his radiant smile. What the hell? Alexander studied the child before him. Is he one of the children from the Hatherland orphanage? But why does this boy look so familiar? Hines's face overlapped with another familiar face. It was as if Alexander had returned to the past. That little girl smiling brightly. Hello, I'm Renee Hatherland. Hines asked, Sir, did you know? Renee used to mention you all the time. Alexander tilted his head toward him. What did she say? Hines tilted his head and thought for a moment. She said you're handsome, but very rude. She also said you're stubborn as hell and your taste is weird. And Alexander cut him off. That's enough. He changed the subject. So, Hines, what did you come to see me about? Hines lifted his head. I want to ask you something. Alexander looked at him. What is it? Hines met his eyes directly. Do you love Renee Hatherland? Alexander fell into his memories. Renee's brilliant smile, the weight of her jumping onto his back, their embrace before a gravestone. He gazed into the distance, where a girl in a straw hat stood among flowers, facing him. Renee turned back while holding Sasha, smiling brightly at him. In the blink of an eye, that radiant smile vanished. In its place, Renee looked at him expressionlessly. Alexander stared at her, his gaze complicated. The two looked at each other across the sand dune. The sunlight was blinding, as if an entire world lay between them. Alexander lowered his eyes. Fragments of memory surfaced like bubbles and burst. He slowly opened his eyes. The sunlight was dazzling. What is this? Alexander stood alone, the sea breeze tousling his black hair as he stared at the distant horizon. A cigarette was pinched between Alexander's fingers, smoke curling upward. Sigh, I must be too tired to have a dream this absurd. A butler-like man approached. Master, pardon the interruption. You have a dinner banquet at Brighton Academy tonight. Also, Milady asked me to give this note to you. Alexander took the note. It was in Renee's handwriting. I have something to do, so I'm heading out first. Father and Mother are waiting for me at Mount Trive. Please arrange next week's schedule. We really ought to discuss the divorce. Alexander's eyes turned cold. The word divorce twisted and magnified in his mind like a sneer. He turned to the butler, Gabriel. Have the car ready within 30 minutes. I'm leaving immediately. Gabriel looked troubled. You mean now? That would mean arriving much earlier than scheduled. Alexander stubbed out the cigarette in the ashtray. It doesn't matter. Holding the note, his eyes were resolute. No matter what, I have to see her in person. People came and went along the street. The sunlight was perfect. A voice rang out. President. Renee was writing furiously at her desk. She looked up. A female employee with short hair placed a thick stack of documents on the desk. I brought the illustrations and materials for the department store product catalog. She was Dorothy Dunfield, an employee at Renee's company. Dorothy continued her report. Mr. Graw's new packaging design arrived today. Would you like to review it? And please look over Roberto's contract as well. Also, Renee looked at the mountain of documents. So many. Dorothy encouraged her. Don't be discouraged. Our Hatherland soap is getting more and more popular. We have to strike while the iron is hot. A faint smile appeared on Renee's lips. It had already been a year since she became the president of Hatherland Soap Company. Thanks to her contract marriage with Alexander, she had extra capital, and she had also been searching for job opportunities for the children at Hatherland Orphanage. That made her think of Cousin Winchester's soap factory. His soap was of exceptional quality, famous not only in the village, but also in neighboring cities. If it gained greater recognition, the factory could expand, and naturally more workers would be needed. So she founded Hatherland Soap Company, specializing in selling Winchester's soap. In less than a year, their soap had successfully entered 10 department stores. Now, they had an official office and a talented team. Dorothy announced energetically, President, I'm heading to Pello's department store now. I need to check the booth placement. Renee smiled in response. Thanks for your hard work, Dorothy. If you get hungry on the way, buy yourself something to eat. I'll pay for it. Dorothy waved excitedly. Wonderful. Thank you. She walked toward the door. See you tomorrow, President, and enjoy the banquet tonight with your husband. The door shut softly. Renee was left alone in the office. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Come to think of it, the banquet starts in 2 hours. Ever since that day, I've been awkwardly avoiding Alexander. His face rose in Renee's mind, and she covered her burning cheeks with both hands. How am I supposed to face him today? Renee gazed out the window. It's all because Alexander has suddenly started acting so strange lately. I should just ignore him like always. That would make things easier for both of us. What's the big deal anyway? There are only 45 days left until the divorce. Renee opened her palm. A wedding ring gleamed on her ring finger. She stared at the ring, her expression conflicted. The closer this marriage comes to its end, the more I can't help thinking about it. A contract made for mutual benefit. In the church, the priest's voice echoed. Groom Alexander Chambord, do you take Renee Hatherland as your wife? And do you promise to love her forever? Alexander looked at Renee, standing before him, and curved his lips into a smile. Yes, Ido. Their two hands overlapped, surrounded by pure white flowers. The vow dissipated into the air. I gained a great deal from this contract, both materially and through experience. But Alexander, what exactly did you get from this marriage? And what were you hoping to get from me? Renee stared at the framed photograph on the desk. What did you gain from this marriage? And what exactly did you expect to get from me? There was a knock at the office door. Renee responded, Come in. A woman carrying a large suitcase walked in. Hello, Lady Chambord. I'm Beatrice, the stylist in charge of your look. It's my honor to serve such a distinguished guest. Renee got up to greet her. Welcome, Beatrice. Thank you for coming. Beatrice opened the suitcase. It was filled with all kinds of outfits and accessories. Lady Chambord, please leave everything to me. Today, I will make you the most beautiful woman in the world. Louis came running over in a hurry. Young master, there's an urgent matter. Alexander asked, what is it? Louis handed him a document. It concerns the Matthias Brothers Club. It's an urgent request. They hope to receive an answer today. Suddenly, a shout drew both their attention. Nina came running over, panting. Wait a moment, Alexander. Alexander looked at Nina expressionlessly. Nina was drenched in sweat. Wait, there's something I want to say to you. Nina's maid, Melinda Deslin, held a handkerchief and carefully wiped the sweat from Nina's forehead. Oh, my poor miss. If you run like this, what if your body can't take it? Louis asked politely, oh, Miss Nina, are you unwell? Do you need me to escort you to your room? Nina irritably slapped his hand away. No need. I'm Fine. In an instant, Nina put on an eager expression. More importantly, Alexander, you're going to the banquet, right? You need a partner, don't you? Alexander remained expressionless. Yes, I'm going with my wife. Nina froze for a moment, then hesitated before saying, but I want to go too. Renee can go anytime. But I can't. She grabbed Alexander's arm. So, Alexander, she said with confidence, go with me today. Don't go with Renee. Alexander shook off her hand. Nina stared blankly for a moment. Then Alexander said coldly, I'm sorry. Nina, I already promised my wife, so I refuse. Then Alexander turned and prepared to leave. Nina was still trapped in the emotions of being rejected. She bit her lip, looking deeply wronged. Then she shouted, you're absolutely unreasonable. Melinda and Louis both jumped in surprise. Ever since I was crippled, because of you, I haven't been able to go out freely for my entire life. And now that you're married, this is how you treat me? Don't you feel even a little sorry for me? My life was completely ruined by you. Look at this, Alexander. Look carefully at what you've done. Nina pulled down her dress, exposing a hideous scar on her shoulder. There wasn't the slightest ripple in Alexander's eyes. You bastard. Alexander fell into memory. He was slapped hard across the face. Because of you, Nina can no longer live a normal life. She can't even bear children. Was it not enough to kill your grandfather and parents? Now you've come to ruin my daughter too. You devil, you destroyed everything I had. Alexander endured Nina's rage. He loosened his fists. Nina. Alexander put on a pair of white gloves, his movements elegant and cold. Next time I'll take you somewhere more comfortable. That's enough for today. Alexander brushed back his bangs and handed the white gloves to Louis. If you're bored, go shopping. Alexander helped Nina into the carriage and left straight away. Nina bit her lip, her eyes full of unwillingness. At a cafe on the street corner, people saw Alexander's car approaching. That car. Isn't that Count Chambord's luxury carriage? In a place like this? Who would ride in that sort of thing here? Now that I think about it, people often say they've seen Lady Chambord around here. No way. Is it really Alexander? Mr. Chambord, if you wait here, I'll bring Milady over. Oh, she's already here. Alexander turned his head. His blue eyes widened instantly. Renee appeared before him dressed in a way he had never seen before. Renee walked up to him. I tried a completely new look today. Alexander stared at Renee in a daze. Renee asked in confusion, is it strange? Why aren't you saying anything? Before she could finish, Alexander leaned close. You look beautiful, Renee. Alexander fastened a necklace around Renee's neck. Renee asked, Alexander, what are you doing? Alexander withdrew his hands. Renee stared blankly at the glittering necklace on her chest. Alexander looked at her gently. It's a gift, Louis explained. The young master personally picked it out. It suits you very well, milady. Renee said, thank you, Louis. Renee was puzzled inside. He actually bought me a gift? What's wrong with him? Has he really gone mad? Maybe I should see a doctor next week. Alexander extended his hand. Shall we go, Lady Chambord? Moonlight blanketed the old manor, with a faint glow shining from several windows. A scream tore through the night. A vase shattered violently. Yellow roses and broken glass scattered everywhere. Melinda panicked. Miss Nina, please calm down. What if you get hurt like this? Nina trembled with rage. That bitch Renee. Hatherlin. Fury burned in Nina's eyes. She dared to steal what's mine. In the darkness, a voice sounded faintly. Nina, my dear daughter, listen carefully. Very soon, we'll enter an extremely wealthy family. Everything in that manor will belong to you alone. 16-year-old Alexander Chambord was the most dazzlingly beautiful boy I had ever seen. A portrait hung on the wall, the boy in it handsome and melancholy. Young Master Alexander is such a dreamboat. Ah, if only I could marry him one day. Two maids passed by carrying buckets. I heard the Marquis locked him in the attic again for 3 days. Should we sneak him out? Who knows? Maybe he'll look at me differently because of it. A stern voice cut them off. You lot, Nina shouted sharply. Why aren't you working? Do you want to be thrown out? The maids jumped in fright and hurriedly apologized. We're sorry, miss. Nina watched them flee with a cold stare. Why do we have to become siblings? I'm the one who should have married Alexander. Nina stared at the portrait on the wall, calculation flashing in her eyes. Even if we aren't related by blood, maybe that doesn't matter. The attic door was pushed open. Alexander. Nina carried a lantern, her eyes blazing. I want him. I want. The lantern light illuminated the corner. Alexander was curled up there, ragged and covered in wounds. Nina knelt before him. Listen, I'll plead with Father for you, so go apologize to him now. Then he won't hit you anymore, and he won't lock you in the attic again. Hey! Alexander slowly raised his head, his blue eyes cold as frost. What the hell are you? Don't you dare order me around. Nina clutched Alexander's sleeve tightly. Because I'm Alexander's family now too. So, Alexander violently shook off her hand. Stop fooling yourself, Nina Anisha. We're nothing to each other. You only married into this family for money. Why do you have to act like family? Nina stammered in panic. Alexander, that's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. A cold smile curled at Alexander's lips. Do I look like an idiot to you? A woman who claimed to be my mother's friend stayed beside her friend's husband for 3 months, then married him. And you want me to believe it was for love? Nina hurriedly refuted him. It wasn't like that. Her hands gripped the hem of her clothes tightly. After your mother died, the Marquis and my mother comforted each other. Their feelings developed naturally. Feelings are sometimes hard to explain. But mother refused the Marquis's proposal. It was he. He said we also needed proper parents and kept persuading mother. That's why all this happened. There was no other reason. Alexander let out a derisive laugh. And you expect me to believe that? Nina, look at the dress and jewels you're wearing. Their price is equal to this entire estate's yearly expenses. The moment you and mother arrived here, you started buying luxury goods every day. You demanded control of the estate finances. You even bought land and a villa in Lynn Abel in your mother's name. And you're still saying this wasn't about money? Are you playing with me? And besides, who do you think is responsible for me being locked up here? Nina went pale. What? You mean this is my mother's fault? She shook her head frantically. Alexander, that must be a misunderstanding too. I'll explain everything. Alexander turned sharply and shook off her hand. Save it. I've had enough of you and your mother. Take your pathetic excuses and get out. He reached for the doorknob, ready to leave. Nina cried out in despair. Alexander, wait. Just a moment. Alexander roared. Move. He shoved Nina away. Nina cried out in pain. She hit the ground hard as the door slammed shut without mercy. Nina stared aghast at the closed door. Hey! She clutched her injured shoulder, her eyes filled with disbelief. My shoulder. Suddenly flames devoured everything, lighting up her terrified face. Fire burned in her pupils. It consumed everything. The enormous manor was reduced to the ground just like that. The officers whispered among themselves. Marquis Chambord died in the fire. His wife and the girl are also severely injured. How could this happen? What will happen to the new wife and her daughter now? They've been married less than 2 months. Well, it was a marriage everyone opposed. They'll probably be thrown out. One officer turned to Nina. The fire seems to have started in the attic. An oil lamp was broken, and miss, you were the only witness in the attic. So can you tell us what exactly happened that day? Nina lowered her eyes. That day, when Alexander rushed out of the attic, he pushed me. I fell onto the oil lamp. Alexander stood by Nina's bed. I am sorry, Nina. Alexander bowed his head, his voice heavy. All of this happened because of me. I will take full responsibility. Nina looked up. Alexander said, whatever you want, say it. In that moment, I thought of Burns' damaged lungs. If enduring all that could let me have Alexander, I was willing to bear anything. From that day on, Alexander granted every request I made. But now he openly ignores me and gives all his attention to another girl. It must be that bitch. She's the one driving a wedge between us. Does she think I'll let her steal him away? Nina's gaze turned icy. A maid walked in. Miss Nina, I'm here in response to the message you had relayed through Melinda a few days ago. There's something I want to tell you. A smile curled at Nina's lips. Is that so? Go on, Rose. A few days earlier, Rose had been standing alone in an empty corridor. It was already past midnight, still working overtime. I should hurry back to my room and rest. A voice stopped her. Hey you. Melinda blocked her way. You're Rose, right? I want to talk to you. Rose lowered her head slightly. Miss Melinda, what do you want with me? Melinda folded her arms. From now on, you'll serve Miss Nina. Of course, the reward won't disappoint you. Rose looked troubled. I don't know how. Melinda interrupted her. It's not hard. You just need to help us drive Madam out. Rose's pupils shrank suddenly. What? Rose looked directly at Nina. Miss Nina, you know this. I'm a lady's personal maid. There's no way I could personally drive out the person I serve. So I'll pretend I never heard your proposal. I am sorry. Please rest well. She turned to leave. Nina's eyes instantly turned cold. Honestly, why do people without status never understand a good offer? Rose Feather, do you really think you're in any position to refuse me? Rose turned back in fright. What do you mean? Nina placed a hand on Rose's shoulder. Listen carefully. If you leave this room now, tomorrow you'll pack up and get out of the estate. I'll make sure you never find work again. You have a sick mother, don't you? If you lose your job, I doubt she'll live much longer. If you can accept all that, then walk out. I'm curious, too, whether your loyalty to your mistress matters more than your family. Rose's face turned paper white, and her hands shook with fear. Nina's lips curled upward. Good. Do you understand your place now? From now on, let me tell you what your task is. Night cloaked the magnificent castle. Inside the banquet hall, lights blazed brilliantly. One guest whispered, "Did you hear? Lady Chambord came today, too." Another guest replied disdainfully, "That country nobody's daughter from who knows where? I remember her. Mr. Chambord even turned down a royal marriage just to marry that country girl. It's astonishing. What kind of woman could captivate a man like that? He's never had any scandal. He occasionally attends social events, but he's always very quiet and leaves early. But one thing is certain. Renee appeared with her arm linked through Alexander's. The guest's eyes were instantly drawn to them. She was a breathtaking beauty. Renee felt uneasy. Why is everyone looking at us? This is so uncomfortable. Alexander turned his head and replied softly, "No idea. Maybe it's because you're beautiful." Renee's face flushed slightly. What? Don't say something so silly. They walked down the steps together. Alexander's gaze was sincere. I'm serious. Out of all the ladies here, Renee, you're the most beautiful. What is going on? He's already been far too gentle with me lately, and now he's saying ridiculous things like this. And what was with that necklace earlier? A jolt ran through Renee's heart. Could he be doing this because he wants something from me? Is he planning to squeeze some profit out before the divorce, using me to gain some other advantage? I knew it. He must have some ulterior motive. Renee ground her teeth inwardly. That actually makes this even scarier. A man who can get anything he wants. What could he possibly want from me that he's acting this abnormally? Lewis hurried over. Sir, sorry. The company you signed with earlier is now requesting a call. It seems you'll have to speak with him personally. Alexander released Renee's arm. Renee, go in first. I'll be there in a moment. Renee entered the banquet hall alone. Attending this kind of event by myself is so awkward. I should find somewhere quiet to rest. She had just turned when a voice stopped her. Renee Hatherland? That's you, isn't it? I'm Lauren. We went to the same school in Whitehall. It's been a long time. Lauren touched her chin lightly. 11 years, has it been? Renee searched her memory. Lauren Syria, the only daughter of Count Syria, a person who had mercilessly tormented her in childhood. Fragments of memory stabbed sharply into her mind. You thief, you stole my money, didn't you? Give it back. 11-year-old Renee knelt on the ground, shaking her head desperately. No, I didn't. Lauren's voice was sharp and grating. What? You're still lying? Do you think we wouldn't know? Your family only has a barony in name. In reality, you're dirt poor. So poor you can't even afford a servant. So how could you possibly buy a book this expensive? Lauren snatched the book from Renee's hands. That was a gift from my father. Give it back. Renee's voice trembled. Do you have any proof? On what grounds are you accusing me? One of the girls beside Lauren sneered. Proof? Of course we have proof. We all saw you going through Lauren's bag. Renee argued desperately. I don't even know what her bag looks like. What are you talking about? Stop lying. Renee suddenly lunged at Lauren. Lauren screamed, "You lunatic!" Lauren shoved her violently to the ground. Renee crashed down hard. Blood seeped from her nose. Lauren looked down at her, her eyes full of aggression. How scary. Are you trying to kill me with that look? Lauren's voice echoed among the trees. You have no money, no parents. Oh, right. You got a grandfather too sick to work. What can your family possibly do to me? Renee asked. Why are you treating me like this? What did I ever do to you? Lauren answered coldly. Nothing. Renee froze. What? Lauren looked down at her. Do I need some grand, righteous reason? You with absolutely nothing, walking around in front of me. That alone is irritating. So whether or not you stole my money doesn't matter at all. What matters is, she bared a grin, I decided you're the thief. That smile cut deeply into Renee's eyes like a blade. Renee's father held out a book. Happy 7th birthday, Renee. Renee gasped with delight. Wow, thank you, father. But this book must have been expensive. We don't have much money. Her father gently stroked her head. It's all right. This is the first birthday present I've ever given you. It's worth spending this much. I'm sorry, child. I'm always ill. I wish I could do more for you. But you're the most precious person in this world to me. No matter what reality is like, your future holds endless possibilities. So please, Renee hugged the book tightly. It was a book titled Demonology. Lauren's fingers mercilessly tore the pages into pieces. Her father's voice echoed in Renee's mind. I hope this book can become the seed of your hope. The remains of the book drifted down like snow, vanishing into endless darkness. The light in Renee's eyes went out in an instant. That seed of hope was utterly crushed before her eyes. The bullying that lasted 4 years finally ended in the autumn of my 15th year. Lauren went abroad to study. I thought I would never see her again. I heard that Marquis Height had recently gotten married, but I never imagined his bride would be Lauren. Lauren walked over holding a wine glass. Lady Chambord, why so quiet? Don't tell me you don't remember me. Renee gave a slight bow. Of course I remember. Lady Height, how could I possibly forget you? You gave me far too many unforgettable memories, didn't you? Lauren swirled her wine glass lightly. But you've changed a lot. I almost didn't recognize you. In the past, your beauty was hidden by your insignificant surname. Now it seems you finally matched that face. Though the noble status you were given comes from Chambord, you had no qualifications of your own. I suppose you used your charms behind the scenes. Anyway, a toast to Calabar's Cinderella. She managed to secure a profitable marriage. Lady Height, Renee's grip tightened on her handbag. That nasty habit of casually judging others and fabricating lies that really hasn't changed at all. I once hoped time would turn you into a decent human being, but I suppose a creature so morally rotten it's beneath even an animal is beyond saving. At this point, the place you truly belong isn't Height Manor, but a cage at Calabar Zoo. Lauren let out a sharp laugh. If I must defend myself, Calabar's Cinderella, Renee Hatherland, that name, has long been famous throughout high society. To be honest, you never had any qualifications, did you? No, more than that. You're a disgrace to the Chambord family. Ever since you married into the Chambords, they've become the center of gossip. Am I wrong? A voice broke the silence. Lady Height, a hand rested lightly on Renee's shoulder. Alexander appeared behind her. He wore a smile. I don't mean to interrupt your conversation, but I think there's a misunderstanding that needs clearing up. I was the one who had loved Renee since childhood and proposed to her. She rejected me many times, but through my tireless efforts, I finally won her heart. Sorry I'm late. Have you been waiting long? Lauren's expression darkened further. A man approached enthusiastically. Lauren, there you are. I've got good news. He was Marquis Fairheight. The Marquis noticed them. Oh, Lord and Lady Chambord, long time no see. Lady Chambord is as beautiful as ever. What's it like having such a gorgeous wife? Alexander smiled. Honestly, it feels like I'm living in a dream every day. Lauren asked, Fair, what's the good news? Marquis Height said, there'll be a card game after the banquet. Some important people are joining this time, and the stakes will be very high. You'll definitely like it. Want in? Lauren smiled with arrogant confidence. Of course, I used to be the queen of cards among the ladies. I haven't played in ages, but this is the perfect chance to show off my skills again. Marquis Height turned to the Chambords. You two should join us as well. If the Chambord family fortune goes into the pot too, the game will be even more exciting, won't it? Alexander replied with a smile. Sounds good. I've long heard about Lady Height's card-playing skills. I've always wanted to see them for myself. Renee looked at him in shock. Alexander, how can you just agree to that? Renee whispered in his ear. Don't you know? I'm terrible at cards. What if I lose all our money? Alexander answered softly. Are you planning to admit defeat before the game even starts? Don't worry, Renee. Even if we lose everything, it won't matter. Renee sounded alarmed. What? Don't joke like that. Alexander's gaze was firm. I'm serious. Renee's voice carried a trace of despair. I told you, didn't I? I'll lose everything. A faint smile touched Alexander's lips. I don't care. My money is still growing anyway, so spend it as freely as you like. Lady Chambord, chips and cards were scattered across the table. Good heavens, Lord Chambord made a complete comeback. I haven't had this much fun in ages. First a full house all in, and then a straight flush. Lauren braced herself against the card table with both hands, trembling in shock. Impossible. How could this happen? How could a hand like that appear? One guest exclaimed in amazement. This is unbelievable. Lord Chambord not only won back all the money Milady lost, he emptied out the entire Height family treasury too. Another guest murmured, how much exactly did Lady Height lose? Just judging by the chips on the table, I'd say at least 1 billion ladines. Lauren's fists clenched at her sides, her knuckles white. My God, that amount is enough to buy 5 luxury estates and still have money left over. What now? Marquis Height roared at Lauren. Are you insane? Didn't you say you were certain you'd win? You were so arrogant then. Our investment last month already failed, and now we've lost another billion ladines in a single day. Have you lost your mind? Lauren's face went deathly pale. And no, that's not it. In that situation, a straight flush couldn't have appeared. I swear, I'm telling the truth. Alexander lifted his wine glass. Lady Height, are you accusing me of cheating? Unfortunately, I'm not clever enough to pull off a trick like that in front of so many witnesses. Well then, shall we settle the account? Lauren forced herself to stay composed. Please wait, Lord Chambord. No matter what, this was only a friendly game that got a little out of hand. You're not really expecting us to pay the full amount, are you? Alexander looked at her coldly. Why not? I'm a businessman who values clear accounts. Of course, considering the huge amount, I can give you a generous deadline. Marquis Height glared viciously at Lauren. This is your mess. You figure out how to deal with it. If you can't, we're finished. Alexander looked at Lauren. It's regrettable that things turn out this way. He raised his glass. I think we should all drink to Lady Height for the gamble she made with her failed marriage. Lauren's face twisted in fear. She had lost everything. Lauren gritted her teeth and walked toward Alexander. Lord Chambord, may I speak with you privately? Alexander's gaze remained icy. Say what you have to say here. Unless you mean to seduce a friend's husband. The guest began whispering. She did look awfully tense, standing beside Lady Chambord earlier. So they really do know each other. But if Lauren divorces, won't the Syria family be finished? I heard they're surviving entirely because of the marriage alliance with the Heights. Lauren clenched her dress tightly. I don't have money right now. Could you make an exception this once? I'm begging you. Alexander looked down at her expressionlessly, not the slightest ripple in his eyes. A flicker of hope appeared in Lauren's gaze. Of course, as long as you say the word. Alexander's voice was merciless. If you insist, I can give you another option. Kneel down right now and beg my wife for forgiveness. Lauren's expression froze instantly, too shocked to speak. A faintly playful smile tugged at Alexander's lips. Who knows? For her sake, I might go easy on you. Memories came rushing in like a tide. Rain washed over the world. Renee huddled alone on the beach. Lauren had destroyed the most precious book she had. That scene never left Renee's mind. She watched the book be torn into pieces. She felt powerless. Even if she found another identical copy, it could never be the same as before. Alexander walked over. Why are you crying here? What happened to your face? Renee hurriedly covered her face. It's nothing. I just fell. But why are you here? Isn't it raining right now? He sat down beside Renee. Why didn't you just take it back? You don't look like the type to let things go. Renee stared at him in shock. How did you know? Alexander looked at her. Who knows? Renee clutched her sleeve. I didn't want her to know. It's too humiliating. Renee asked back. That girl is from the Syria family. I have no money and no one backing me. What could I possibly do? Alexander placed a book on top of Renee's head. Renee asked in confusion. What are you doing? A gift, Alexander said. Renee looked at the book. How is this possible? Those torn-apart memories now appeared whole before her eyes. What is this? How are those ripped pages stuck back together? Alexander looked at Renee with satisfaction. Time returned to the day before. Alexander stood alone in the garden. Why hasn't she shown up all day? Alexander was drawn by a conversation nearby. You mean that girl named Renee Hatherland? After everything that happened to her, she hasn't cried even once. If it were me, I'd have run away long ago. That's exactly what I mean. I don't know what she's always so proud of. The boy lifted up the book. But Lauren, this book belongs to Renee, doesn't it? What should we do with it? Lauren laughed scornfully and pointed to the sea. Throw it away. Renee might come back looking for it. Just throw it straight into the ocean. The boy looked at the sea. All right, I'll throw it really far. Alexander stared at him. Why are you holding that book all of a sudden? And why did you tear up someone else's belongings before throwing them away? Alexander grabbed the hand that was about to throw the book. The boy asked irritably, what the hell? Lauren snapped unhappily. Hey, why are you taking that book? Who are you? Why did you suddenly pop up and start meddling in other people's business? Alexander asked coldly. Where are the rest of the pages? Lauren broke into a cold sweat. What? Are you ignoring me right now? Alexander's gaze was dark. Where are all of them? Alexander said. These pages were torn to pieces very thoroughly. I picked every one of them up to put them back together. I stayed up all night. At this point, you owe me your life. Renee looked at the restored book, and tears poured from her eyes. Alexander asked nervously, "Why are you crying all of a sudden?" Renee hugged the book tightly. "I'm just so happy." Alexander sighed. "You really are." He wiped Renee's tears away. "Stop crying." But Renee only cried harder. Alexander said mercilessly, "You look even uglier when you cry." Renee, punch him hard. "You're the ugly one. How can you say something like that? You jerk." Renee's tone softened. "Still, thank you, Alexander. You helped me get back something so precious." Alexander looked at her. "Is it really that important to you?" Renee's thoughts drifted back to the past. "It was the first gift my father gave me on my 7th birthday. My dream is to become a veterinarian. On the farm, I often saw sick animals, but their owners would just throw them away. I didn't have the means to take them in, and I couldn't treat them either. So I decided I would become a veterinarian." Alexander asked, "So you're planning to apply to veterinary school?" Renee lowered her head. "Yeah, I want to go, but I don't know if I can. I might not even be able to finish high school, let alone go to college. My family doesn't have that kind of money." Alexander thought, no wonder Marquis's family doesn't even have a decent servant, and the house is such a mess. Renee said softly, "Maybe it's just always been like this since I was born. But when I was 12, my father got caught up in an investment scam. My mother ran away from home, and my father fell ill. Then when I was 17, he passed away. Now it's just my grandmother and me relying on each other." Alexander asked, "Don't you have any relatives who can help?" Renee shook her head. "I have an uncle, but he's a priest. He can't help us, and he lives with my grandmother too." Renee's thoughts drifted far away. "We worked in the fields together. We ate together. Everything was fine. But what really hurt me was the bullying from the other children. They said I smelled because I was poor, but I never did anything wrong. I don't know what I did wrong." Alexander cut off her thoughts. "Don't bother with what people who hate you say. They already decided they wouldn't like you no matter what. They just want to bully you and need an excuse to do it." Alexander reached into his bag and took out some ointment. "So don't waste your feelings on that. Let's deal with your wounds first." Renee asked softly, "Alexander, why are you so nice to me?" Alexander shot back, "When have I ever been nice to you?" Renee counted on her fingers. "Last year you played with me, you stayed up late helping me write letters, and now you're putting medicine on me." Alexander looked away. "That's only because you always make me worry." Renee pressed him. "Is it because you pity me?" Alexander turned back. "Renee, does every orphan go around causing trouble like you? I don't pity you. I care about you because you're my friend. So even if I go back to the capital, if something like this happens again, don't let it crush you. I'll always be on your side." Renee repeated softly, "My side?" Alexander answered firmly, "Yeah." Sunlight poured over them. The sea breeze brushed lightly past. Alexander's voice echoed in her mind. "I'll always be on your side." Renee stood alone on the balcony, gazing at the full moon in the night sky. That promise was the only starlight in her long night. It was hope and also a trace of sorrow that couldn't be put into words. Renee repeated softly, "My side?" Alexander answered firmly, "Yeah." Sunlight poured over them. The sea breeze brushed lightly past. Alexander's voice echoed in her mind. "I'll always be on your side." Renee stood alone on the balcony, gazing at the full moon in the night sky. That promise was the only starlight in her long night. It was hope and also a trace of sorrow that couldn't be put into words. My first love began with that belief. So even though money was the main reason I chose this marriage, deep in my heart, I still held onto a sliver of hope. A marriage contract lay before us. Neither party may reveal that this is a contract marriage. Both parties must do their best to act like a real married couple in front of others. Minor physical contact for the sake of appearances is permitted, but sexual relations are strictly forbidden. Alexander Shambell will pay the monthly operating expenses of the Hazelin orphanage and provide any other support Renee Hazelin may need. But deep down, I still carried a little hope. Maybe I could see the Alexander from those days again. Maybe this time I could get an answer. When I was 16, why did he suddenly cut off all contact with me? Why did he come to hate me? Renee clenched that note tightly in her hand. "Never come back. Go away." But when I saw Alexander again 8 years later, he had become a completely different person. Alexander's voice was cold. "Renee, I've already supported you materially according to the contract. Do I also have to deal with all these trivial matters? Just because I'm your legal husband, do you think I'm your real husband? Don't you think it's laughable for someone your age to be this naive?" In that moment, I finally understood. There was no going back for us. Our mirror-like relationship had shattered. Nearly 2 years later, just before we were about to remove the label of husband and wife and become strangers again, Alexander curled his lips into a faint smile. "Then why don't you kneel now and beg me, my wife?" He raised his wine glass, his gaze playful. "Perhaps for my wife's sake, I'll show you some mercy." Lauren's whole body stiffened, his teeth clenched tight. He turned away sharply, preferring to pay the sky-high gambling penalty rather than apologize. A blond man nearby asked, "Wow, Alexander, isn't making him kneel a bit much? The Count Syria family will definitely come begging you every day after this anyway. Don't you hate trouble more than anything? And it's not like you care about that bit of pocket change. Let this one go." Alexander looked at Renee and refused decisively. "I don't want to." Renee stared blankly at Alexander. She really understood this man less and less now. Renee stood alone on the balcony, the night breeze cool against her skin. Even though that woman had tried to humiliate and attack me, the Alexander the First would never go to such lengths just to stand up for me. He certainly wouldn't make himself the center of upper-class gossip over something like this. "Alexander, if there's something you want, just say it. In this marriage, I've never given you anything of value, and I have no standing to refuse you anything. So why go to all this trouble when there's a much simpler way?" Renee recalled what Rose had said. "Yes, he specifically told me to handle it properly. Why are you suddenly being so kind to me again? When you act like this, I can't help feeling confused. As if we could still go back to the way things used to be." Alexander lifted his wine glass, a faint smile flickering in his eyes. Renee's gaze passed through the crowd and landed on him. He was actually smiling, utterly unaware of the turmoil inside me. How depressing. Renee felt a little tired. Suddenly, a voice nearby caught her attention. "Ah, darling, I missed you so much. Why have you been avoiding me?" The man struggled hard. "Scally, let go." Scally soothed him. "Don't worry, there's no one here. Hold me as much as you want." The man's face went pale. "Don't do this. There's nothing between us." Renee immediately sensed something was wrong. "This is bad. Should I make some noise?" She deliberately cleared her throat. The two of them whipped around in shock. Scally hurriedly let go of the man and stammered goodbye. "Dee, darling, see you later." Then she fled in a panic. The man walked over and apologized. "I'm sorry you had to see such an indecent scene." Renee replied calmly, "It's fine. I didn't see anything. Don't worry about it." He straightened his tie. "Thank you." The man suddenly recognized Renee. "Aren't you the person in charge of Hazelin?" Renee gave a slight wave. "That's right. Do we know each other?" The man stepped forward, one hand over his chest, and bowed gracefully. "It is an honor to see you again. I am Lefrus Litvi. 4 years ago, I volunteered there at Christmas. I now run a travel agency called Toward the World." Renee spoke with slight embarrassment. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you, Mr. Littrey. I am Renee Chambel. I'm currently running Hazelin's soap company." Lefrus quickly apologized. "Mrs. Chambel, so you're married now. I've been abroad the whole time, so I had no idea. Please forgive me." Renee smiled. "It's all right. You don't need to mind it." Lefrus asked earnestly, "By the way, may I stay by your side for a while? If I go back out there now, that young lady will surely pester me again." Renee answered readily, "Of course. The timing is perfect. I was just thinking the moonlight was too beautiful to enjoy alone. This way, Mr. Littrey." Gratitude flashed in Lefrus's eyes. "Thank you. You're just as kind as ever." Renee looked at Lefrus and fell briefly into a daze. He was the kind of person whose emotions were written all over his face, the exact opposite of Alexander. "But why is he looking at me like that?" Renee felt a little uncomfortable. Is there something on my face?" Lefrus snapped back to himself. Saw thee. I was staring too long. Actually, even back at the orphanage, I thought so. Mrs. Chambel, you really look a lot like my younger sister." I know that sounds like a clumsy pickup line, but I swear it isn't. "Oh, right. Let me show you a photo." He took out an old photograph. "Look, this girl in the nurse's uniform is my sister. This was when she was working at a military hospital." Renee looked at the photo. "You're right. We really do look alike. But to be honest, I think your sister is much prettier than I am." Lefrus hurriedly shook his head. "How could that be? I'm not saying this just because I'm her brother. She's nowhere near as beautiful as you." Her childhood nickname was Little Piglet. Renee laughed softly. "What a coincidence. My husband used to call me that too when we were little. He said I was his ugly little piglet cousin." Lefrus suddenly understood. So you two were childhood sweethearts. I thought the Chambel family had always lived in Calabar." Renee explained, "Our grandfathers were close friends, so my husband used to come to Whitey every holiday. That's how we became close. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos from back then. He was especially mischievous as a child, always pulling strange pranks." A cold voice suddenly cut in. "That's rather hurtful." Renee jumped. Alexander had appeared behind her without her noticing. He wrapped an arm around Renee. "I was wondering where my wife had gone. So you were here, talking badly about your husband in front of another man." Renee laughed softly. Wasn't he, though? He was especially mischievous as a child, always pulling strange pranks. A cold voice suddenly cut in. That's rather hurtful. Renee's pupils shrank sharply, cold sweat sliding down her cheek. So my wife was hiding here all along. Alexander had somehow appeared behind her. One hand rested possessively on her waist. He bent down and whispered into Renee's ear, talking badly about your husband in front of another man. Renee forced herself to stay calm. Ah, yes, Mr. Lefris, this is my husband. Alexander extended his hand. A pleasure to meet you. I am Alexander Chambel. Lefris immediately responded, Mr. Chambel, a pleasure. I am Lefrus Litvi. We actually met once at the reopening of the Crystal Palace. I don't know if you remember. A perfect smile hung on Alexander's face. I'm afraid I don't, but I promise I'll remember you from now on. Then, more importantly, Mr. Littree, I have something to discuss with my wife. Could you give us a moment? Lefris blinked slightly. Oh, of course. He said goodbye to Renee. Mrs. Chambel, thank you for today. Renee waved. Mr. Littree, goodbye. Lefris turned and left, his footsteps echoing across the empty balcony. Renee broke the silence. So, what do you want to talk about? Alexander asked Renee. Don't you have anything to say? Renee shot back. We don't usually talk like that. What could I possibly say? Alexander's lips curved into a cold smile. Mrs. Chambel gets caught red-handed bad-mouthing her husband and can still act this righteous. You've got some nerve. Renee refused to back down. I wasn't making anything up. When we were little, you really did pull all kinds of strange pranks on me, didn't you? Her tone was barbed, and you kept calling me ugly little piglet cousin. Did you forget that too? Alexander put on an innocent act. I don't know. I don't really remember. Renee looked at him in disbelief. I can't believe this. Then she said, Alexander, actually, there's something else I want to talk about. Alexander seemed a little surprised. With me? Renee asked. What was that about at the card table just now, between you and Loren Haight? Alexander asked. What do you mean? Renee exposed him. Don't play dumb. There's no way you did that for no reason. A trace of admiration flashed in Alexander's eyes. I'm honored. The corner of his mouth lifted. I didn't expect my wife to understand me so well. It was nothing serious. I was simply fulfilling my duty. I told you before, Renee, this contract marriage would not cause you any loss. Renee countered, but that wasn't a loss caused by the marriage. It was my private matter. Alexander corrected her. Because of the contract, you were forced to attend the dinner, and you ended up running into Loren Haight. That clearly put you at a disadvantage. And insulting you is the same as insulting the Chambel family. So even if it's troublesome for the family's dignity, I couldn't just ignore it. That's right. This is the Alexander of today. A man who values only contracts and his own interests, cold and indifferent to everything else. In his eyes, I'm pathetic enough that I can't even deal with Loren Haight. What exactly was I expecting? How foolish. Renee spoke quietly. I am sorry, Alexander. Alexander looked puzzled. Why are you apologizing all of a sudden? Renee's voice was full of self-reproach. I should have handled it myself, but I couldn't. Loren Haight is entirely my private matter. It has nothing to do with you. But because I handled it so stupidly, I ended up dragging you into it. Alexander cut her off. I never thought that. Renee's pupils contracted sharply. She looked up at him in disbelief. Alexander stared at her. Whether when we were little or now, I've never thought you were stupid. You're the victim, Renee. Alexander's voice was firm. Whether in the past or now, none of this is your fault. So you have no reason to apologize to me for something that isn't your fault. What's wrong with him? Why is he suddenly like this? Alexander's tone softened. I also know trauma doesn't disappear easily, so stop carrying everything by yourself. He took Renee's hand. Stop overthinking. Mrs. Chambel, try to enjoy today, will you? Alexander gently placed a blue chip in Renee's palm. In that moment, Renee lifted her eyes. Alexander's blue eyes, like the sea in daylight, were fixed on her. Renee, come here. A voice echoed in the ocean of memory. It was Alexander as a child, the boy who had always smiled as he reached out his hand to her. On that face was the pure expression only an 11-year-old boy could have. Seeing that expression, I couldn't help beginning to think. Maybe Alexander didn't have any ulterior motive. Maybe he just wanted us to get along again like we used to. If that were really true, Renee tightened her grip on the chip and called softly, Alexander, there's something I've always wanted to ask you. Alexander turned slightly. Let's talk inside. If you stay out here too long, you'll catch cold. Renee blinked. All right. Inside the casino, the lights blazed brightly. Guests chatted and laughed as chips piled up on the gaming tables. One guest raised a glass. Is it raining? Another looked out the window. How fitting. This piece is perfect for a rainy day. Alexander and Renee walked into a quiet room. A sorrowful melody flowed from the gramophone. What's it called? That guest's voice sounded again. You don't know this famous piece? It was a genius's final farewell. He ended his life on a rainy day. Because of severe depression, Alexander's gaze froze. Summer festival. His body suddenly swayed. Renee hurriedly supported him. Alexander, what's wrong? Alexander pushed her hand away. Renee, go home first. Renee looked completely confused. What are you talking about? Renee followed after him. Alexander, wait a second. She reached out and grabbed his arm. Alexander didn't turn around. I told you go home first. Don't mind me. Just go. Renee's voice was urgent. What are you saying? How could I possibly leave when you look like this? Alexander suddenly turned and shook off her hand. Renee, Lynn. His voice was icy and cutting. Didn't you hear what I said? Stop bothering me and leave. Alexander looked down at her, his eyes utterly devoid of warmth. Oh, right. I almost forgot. The sound of the rain grew louder, washing over the world outside the window. During these 2 years of marriage, I had almost forgotten what kind of eyes he always looked at me with. Why are you being so annoying today? Don't tell me. You, a fake, suddenly want to play the part of a real wife now. Look, Renee, there's no one else here. So put away your pathetic act. You don't need it. He was right. The only thing connecting us was a piece of paper, a marriage contract, a relationship that could never become real. Throughout the marriage, he constantly reminded me of that. Every time we brushed past each other, there was only contempt in his eyes. So I had always kept to my place as the fake one, doing my utmost not to forget the true nature of this relationship. But now, on the eve of our divorce, who was it that had thrown all that effort away? Renee's fingers tightened around the hem of her clothes. She looked up. Then I'll ask you just one thing. Did you really see me as nothing more than a tool to be discarded once it was used up? Renee's voice echoed through the empty hall, trembling slightly. Alexander did not hesitate at all. Yes. His answer was like a cold hammer, shattering her final illusion. So, Renee, since you're only a tool, then be loyal to your place. Don't overstep like this. Renee stood there in silence, an endless silence. Renee lowered her eyes, and a bitter smile appeared on her lips. I understand. Then I'll be going. Rain slammed violently against the window. Alexander stood there alone, staring in the direction she had left. Suddenly, his body lurched violently. He dropped to his knees as if all the strength had been sucked out of him. She's finally gone. Alexander trembled as he fumbled inside his coat for something. I need to take the medicine quickly. He pulled the cork from a small glass bottle filled with clear liquid. Alexander's hand went slack. The medicine bottle slipped from his fingertips. He reached out desperately, but grasped only empty air. The bottle crashed to the floor with a sharp, piercing shatter. Glass fragments and pills scattered everywhere. He collapsed onto the floor, breathing raggedly, cold sweat soaking his hairline. The gramophone turned slowly, the music flowing on. Alexander's eyes were hollow. On the floor was a twisted shadow, the outline of his mother falling. Alexander, you killed your mother. Shut up. If you hadn't gone to see her that day, he jolted awake with a start, gasping for breath. Cold sweat streamed down in layers. Alexander's eyes flew open, his blue pupils contracting. He sat collapsed on the icy floor, his gaze passing over a pair of bare feet. It's been a long time. Alexander looked up. A woman's figure hovered in midair. Mother, he murmured, his eyes full of endless fear and despair. Sunlight streamed through the window and spilled across Renee's sleeping face. Golden strands of hair shimmered in the morning light. She slowly opened her eyes. The other side of the bed was empty. As expected, he had slept in the office again. Didn't I tell you to leave me alone and go home first? Renee's thoughts returned to last night. Alexander's cold voice echoed in her ears. Why are you being so annoying today? You fake. Do you suddenly want to play the part of a real wife? Renee, since you're only an object, then stay true to your purpose. Don't overstep like this. Renee's eyes darkened as she hugged her knees lightly. Yes, he's always been that kind of person since childhood. So why be surprised or disappointed now? He always charms people's hearts without restraint, then changes as if nothing happened, stabbing straight through them with an icy knife. Renee sat at the bedside, her gaze resolute. This time it's really over. Just wait and see. If I fall for it again, then I'm a complete fool. A knock sounded at the door. A woman's voice came from outside. Renee, may I come in? Renee responded, please do. The door opened, and Josie walked in, smiling as she greeted her. Good morning, child. Renee quickly stepped forward, her tone full of concern. Grandmother, you're not well. Why did you come here yourself? You could have had Andrea call for me. Josie smiled and waved it off. It's all right. Don't worry. A little movement is good for me. She gazed at Renee. More importantly, Renee, if you have time, would you be willing to have a cup of tea with me? Purple tea was poured into cups, the scent of lavender spreading through the room. This is a new lavender tea I just received. It's quite nice. I also brought some peach cake. Give it a try. Renee asked, thank you, grandmother, but did something happen? You came so early today, so suddenly. A trace of worry flashed through Josie's eyes. Actually, after you came back from the banquet yesterday, I saw your face and got worried. I try not to think about it, but I just couldn't put my mind at ease. And Alexander didn't come home either. If you're uncomfortable, you don't have to answer, but can you tell me what happened? Renee asked, grandmother, may I ask you something too? Something I've always been curious about. Would you answer me? Josie smiled. Of course. Child, you can ask me anything. Renee looked straight at her. Grandmother, do you know a piece called Summer Festival? Summer Festival, yes. At the banquet yesterday, Alexander suddenly started acting strange. I think it may have been because of that song. Josie gently set her teacup back on the table. I see. It seems Alexander still hasn't told you that story. She lowered her eyes. Renee, although the public believes his mother, Blair Kimball, died in an accident, the truth is that Blair took her own life. Renee's pupils contracted, and the first person to find her was Alexander. In those blue eyes was reflected the image of a woman. It became his eternal nightmare. Alexander. Alexander picked up a beautifully wrapped gift box. Will that child like it? A faint smile appeared on his face. His mother appeared in the doorway. Alexander, are you going there again? Alexander turned around. Yes. His mother walked forward. How about not going there this year and spending the holiday here instead? She reached out and held Alexander's arm. Or you could invite that child here. Alexander looked at his mother helplessly. Then he pulled free of her hand. Next year. I'll invite them next year. A trace of tenderness flashed through Alexander's eyes. Or we could go there together next year. I think you'd like it too, Mother. His mother's face instantly stiffened. Her lips trembled slightly. It was a suggestion she could not bear. A bitter smile hung on his mother's face. All right, then let's do that. Next year, we'll go together. Alexander picked up his suitcase and turned to leave. His mother watched his retreating back. After Alexander had gone far away, she still remained frozen in that farewell posture, as if she had struggled with herself. In the end, her hand dropped weakly. Light outlined her pale figure. When Alexander returned home, the suitcase slipped from his hand. Mother, his eyes widened in horror. Mother, he rushed over in disbelief. A heart-wrenching scream tore into the sky. Mother, that was the day Alexander returned from his holiday. That day was filled with every kind of sound: rain, thunder, eerie music, and crying. The newspaper headlines declared an accident. The child's father did it to protect Blair's reputation and to avoid hurting the child further. But for Alexander, kneeling there on the floor, it became a nightmare he could never forget for the rest of his life. Holding her teacup, Josie said, I heard that Summer Festival was playing in that room at the time. Renee felt as if struck by lightning. 16. I never imagined Alexander had gone through something like that at that age. Summer Festival. The wound Alexander suffered then must still remain in the depths of his heart. Renee gazed at the curtain of rain outside the window and softly called his name. Alexander. She had been staring absent-mindedly out the window when a kitten interrupted her thoughts. A kitten bit at the hem of her skirt. Renee asked in surprise, Where have you been? Oh my God, you're hurt. What happened? Where are the kittens? The kitten tugged at her skirt, signaling for her to follow. Renee ran quickly after it. Renee looked at the kitten. Rain, is it in here? The kitten stopped in front of a door. This is Nina's room. Of all rooms, it had to be Nina's room. And at a time like this, she took a deep breath. Then she raised her hand and knocked. Nina, sorry to bother you so late, but could you open the door? Renee knocked harder. Nina, just for a second, please. What happened? Nina opened the door. Her voice carried a trace of impatience. Renee, what are you making a fuss about in the middle of the night? Renee apologized. Sorry for disturbing you so late. My cat seems to be in your room. Could you let me come in and look? What cat? You're actually pounding on my door again over a cat? I can't believe this. Nina laughed mockingly. Melinda, do you think this is reasonable? Melinda chimed in, no. This is outrageous. How dare you treat Miss so rudely? Renee's gaze turned cold. Melinda, I'm speaking to Nina right now. Melinda shrank back a step. Nina pushed Melinda aside. There is no cat in my room. I'm allergic to cats. Renee's eyes sharpened. Allergic to cats? Then all the more reason I need to check. At the very least, I need to take Rain out. Nina gritted her teeth. She shoved Renee hard. There's nothing here. I told you that filthy cat of yours isn't here. Renee clutched her shoulder and stared at her in shock. Alexander had once said to Nina, "My wife and I have an agreement." A violent fire flared in Nina's eyes. If only she weren't here. She raised her hand to slap Renee. "Just because you're wearing a wedding ring, you think you can treat me like this?" Renee shut her eyes, bracing for the slap. But the pain she expected never came. Renee opened her eyes in confusion. Alexander had stepped in front of her protectively. Renee looked up in shock. Alexander's hand clamped tightly around Nina's wrist, the force nearly twisting it out of shape. A cold gleam flashed in Alexander's eyes, and his voice was glacial. "Have you always been this kind of person?" Shambell Company. Rain poured down outside. This is the final technical test report for the M21. A 2,140 cubic centimeters, 4-cylinder engine. Maximum speed, 120 kilometers per hour. Standing before the desk, Michelle reported, "Brake system. Auto show schedule. Urban environmental project. Gangurishmin Auhustish." Alexander recalled what he had said back then. "Why are you being this annoying today of all days? You fake. Are you suddenly trying to act like a real wife now?" "Renee, since you're an object, then stay true to your purpose. Don't overstep like this." Renee's face appeared in his mind. She had answered calmly, "I understand." Michelle suddenly said, "Please leave work." Alexander looked up. "What?" Michelle met his gaze. "What I mean is, please go home and sleep for more than 10 hours. Michelle Jenks, Alexander's secretary, wore a serious expression. Alexander asked, "What nonsense are you suddenly spouting? Did you fall down the stairs on your way here?" Michelle retorted, "No, I'm fine. But sir, you are not. Your condition is affecting your work. So please go home today." Alexander rubbed his temples, utterly exhausted. Michelle gathered up the documents. "Otherwise, I'm going on strike right now." Alexander stared at him in disbelief. "Have you lost your mind?" Michelle answered, "No one can stay sane under a crazy boss. Come on, I'll personally take you home." Alexander gave in helplessly. "You really do know that this useless boss can't function without his secretary, and you're using that to threaten me." The car slowly came to a stop in the rain. Michelle announced, "Sir, we've arrived." Alexander said, "It's raining so hard. You should stay the night too." Michelle held an umbrella over Alexander. "Really? I was worried the roads would be slippery." The butler greeted them at the door. "Welcome home, master." Alexander walked into the foyer. "Gabriel, I'm going upstairs directly. Prepare a room for Michelle." Wiping the rain from his head, he asked, "Where's Renee?" Then Nina's scream rang out from upstairs. "I told you she's not here. Your filthy cat isn't here." Alexander frowned. "Got." Alexander started up the stairs, his footsteps echoing through the corridor. Nina's furious voice continued, "Just because you're wearing a wedding ring, you think you can treat me like this?" Nina raised her hand in anger and was about to strike Renee. "Renee!" Alexander shouted her name loudly. He grabbed Nina's wrist and yanked her away. Nina cried out in pain. Alexander shielded Renee behind him, looking down at Nina with icy eyes. "Have you always been like this?" And Nina. Nina looked at Alexander in panic. Alexander," she tried to pull free. "And no, this is..." Alexander looked down at Nina, his voice devoid of all warmth. "I asked you, have you always treated Renee like some madwoman? Can't you understand my question?" "And no, that's not it. Just now this woman." Nina stammered in defense. Alexander cut her off. "This woman..." He pulled Renee closer, his tone turning dangerous. "If you had behaved yourself, I would have allowed you to continue enjoying my protection. But your behavior now has changed my mind. Listen carefully. Before you change your surname to Shambell, don't let my anger outweigh the last bit of guilt I still feel toward you. Otherwise, you will never set foot in Shambell Manor again. And your mother can forget about using her jewel-covered hands to stroke her pampered pets ever again." Alexander flicked open a lighter. The flame danced in his eyes, ready to turn everything to ash. Nina's eyes widened in terror. How much did Alexander know? Alexander released her hand, turned, and grabbed Renee. "Let's go." Renee struggled. "Wait, I have to go inside and find my cat." Alexander dragged her away by force. Renee cried out, "My cat is in there." Alexander asked, "What do you mean?" Nina panicked. "No, Renee is talking nonsense." Renee explained. "As soon as the door opened, Rain ran inside. And the kittens haven't shown themselves all day, so Rain probably went in to look for them." Nina roared. "And over something this minor, you want to search my room in the middle of the night?" Renee looked at Nina, her eyes cold. "Yes." Renee shook off Alexander's hand. "I'll leave as soon as I find Rain." She rushed toward the door. "Wait." Nina and the maids tried to stop her. Alexander blocked Nina. "I'm only taking one look." "Nina." Renee rushed into the room. "Rain, come out." Renee picked Rain up. Where are the kittens? Where are the kittens? She looked toward the open window. Rain spattered lightly through it. Outside, several kittens were trembling on the eaves. Renee screamed in horror. Oh my God, what on earth happened? Nina turned to Melinda in panic. I don't know anything. Melinda, have you seen this before? Melinda, equally panicked, shook her head. And no, I haven't. It's my first time seeing it too. Alexander looked at Renee. Question her later. He took off his coat. Renee called out to him, Alexander, you're soaked through. Alexander told her, stay here. Without hesitation, Alexander climbed out the window. He stepped onto the slick eaves and carefully moved closer to the kittens. He reached out and caught one of them. Alexander tucked the kitten into his arms and turned to shout into the room, Renee, catch! Renee gasped. Alexander, be careful, Alexander. As she watched him in the rain, she thought, why are you helping me like this when you're so cruel to me? All you're doing is making me more confused. What are your true intentions? Alexander caught the last kitten. This is the last one. A bolt of lightning split the night sky. The eaves instantly became dangerously slick. His foot slipped and his body lost balance. Renee froze in place. Alexander fell into the curtain of rain. It happened so fast that Renee had no time to react. She lunged toward the windowsill, reaching out desperately, trying to grasp that falling figure. A heart-rending scream tore through the cold, rainy night. Alexander, under the clear sunlight, waves lapped gently against the beach. Renee and Alexander sat side by side, quietly looking into the distance. Renee raised the ice cream in her hand. What are you looking at? Smiling, she held it out. Want a bite? Alexander didn't answer. He only looked at her quietly, then slowly leaned in. He gently kissed Renee on the lips. Sunlight and sea breeze bore witness to that moment. It was a tender, lingering kiss. Alexander pulled back slightly, their noses almost touching. We're old enough to kiss now. He took the ice cream and bit into it, mischief glinting in his eyes. Since you did it with me, you can't do it with anyone else now. Renee's face flushed bright red. What? Who says? Angrily, she smeared the ice cream onto Alexander's face. I'm still going to kiss other people. Just you wait and see. Renee turned and ran. Hey, stop right there. Alexander, watch your back. Then stay by my side and watch for yourself. Alexander let out a soft laugh, his eyes full of tenderness. Then suddenly, a cold voice rang out. Alexander, are you happy leaving your mother all alone? The smile on Alexander's face froze instantly, pain and remorse filling his eyes. Why weren't you by her side? The scene changed. A cold coffin lay quietly in a dim room, covered in white flowers. Alexander's thoughts were dragged back into the past. Why did you abandon her? Ungrateful brat. He whipped around, his eyes full of terror and unwillingness. A powerless hand hung down over the stone road, declaring the end of a life. Alexander stood before another coffin. Devouring your mother wasn't enough. Now you've devoured your father too. Look what you've done. Blazing flames swallowed the entire manor. The servants screamed in panic. Bring water, quickly. The master is hurt. The master is still inside. Master. Firelight illuminated the chaotic courtyard. You killed them. Alexander dropped to his knees, both hands braced against the cold stone. You devoured every single one of them. Yes, it was me. Because of me. Everything. Alexander covered his face with both hands in unbearable pain. So, are you going to make Renee unhappy too? That voice rang out again. Alexander jerked his head up, eyes filled with fear. Renee. Alexander opened his eyes. Renee was shaking the person in her arms. Alexander, open your eyes. Tears streamed down Renee's face, refusing to stop. Renee, Alexander reached out his hand. I never wanted to see that expression on your face, and I never wanted to hurt you. Before you suffer any more because of me, I have to put everything back where it belongs. Alexander reached to wipe away Renee's tears, only to realize it was merely his spirit doing the wiping. Alexander, did I come too late? Alexander lay on the bed, his soul already separated from his body. The door was gently pushed open. A butler entered carrying a tray. Madam, I brought the water and medicine. Renee thanked him. Thank you, Gabriel. The butler asked, has the master not woken up even once? Renee shook her head. No, it seems he's catching up on sleep. There isn't the slightest sign that he'll wake. Renee's thoughts drifted back to the past. The shock back then had been too great. On that rainy night, Alexander had collapsed to the ground, still shielding Renee's beloved cat in his arms. The butler cried out in terror, quick, call the doctor. Luckily, it was summer. The grass was thick. Heaven truly protected him. Renee's eyes were red from crying. Yes, the cats are all safe too. Alexander wasn't seriously hurt either. We only need to wait and see. The butler bowed slightly. Madam, please don't worry too much. The master has always been strong since childhood. He raised a finger to his lips and whispered to tell you a secret. This isn't even the first time he's fallen out of a tree. Renee covered her mouth in surprise. What? Alexander's soul, holding Renee close, was startled by the sudden exposure of such an embarrassing story. So please, get some rest. After saying that, the butler turned and left. Renee looked at the sleeping Alexander on the bed. You were always calling me trouble. Looks like you've caused plenty yourself. Renee bent over and looked at him. Hey, Alexander Chambel, you're not going to make me a widow like this, are you? We have so much to talk about. Stop avoiding it. Let's talk properly. Why didn't you answer my letters back then? You said you liked me. You said we'd travel together. Renee's hand tightened abruptly. But why? Why did you suddenly start hating me? Was it because you were in too much pain then? Alexander reached out futilely, looking at Renee leaning against the bedside. Renee, I never hated you. I just needed you. So I selfishly borrowed you. Before your life became even more unfortunate, before I grew even greedier, I should have sent you back to that beautiful place. A cat watched quietly, its blue eyes filled with confusion. It looked at the scene in the room. Alexander's soul was gently guarding Renee. Renee wept sadly, keeping vigil beside Alexander's window. Night fell over the estate. Andrea stood holding a tray. Rose, talk to me. Rose turned around. Andrea, what is it? Andrea lifted the item on the tray. Do you recognize this? Rose's voice trembled slightly. That belongs to Madam. Yes, it was found in Melinda's room yesterday. Andrea's tone was cold, but Melinda couldn't possibly enter the master and Madam's room. So do you know how she got this? What? I don't know. Rose denied in panic. Andrea drew a deep breath, her sharp gaze locking onto her. I see. Then it seems you failed to manage Madam's room properly. Give me the bedroom key. What? Rose stared at Andrea in horror. Andrea took the key from her. From now on, I will inspect every servant's room. Items are missing from the master's room as well. Until the culprit is found, all servants are forbidden from entering Mr. and Mrs. Chambel's bedroom. Rose's face turned deathly pale, her hands clutching her skirt as if grasping red-hot iron. Morning sunlight poured through the window into the room. Alexander lay in bed. The harsh light flashed across his eyes, and he instinctively raised a hand to shield them. Alexander suddenly opened his eyes. Am I back? No. He quickly sat up. He looked around. Was that a dream? What kind of dream was that? A kitten jumped on a bedside. He reached out and picked it up. Hey, you weren't hurt, were you? He stroked the kitten's head. Looks like you're tougher than I am. The kitten wriggled free from his arms and jumped onto the bed. He let out a soft laugh. Where are you trying to climb to? Alexander stared at the cat. He gazed into its eyes. I've seen eyes like these somewhere before. The door was suddenly flung open. A butler rushed in. Master, you're awake. The butler hurried to the bedside. Thank heavens, you've finally woken up. Is there anything wrong? Do you feel unwell? Anywhere? Leaning against the headboard, Alexander said, I'm fine. How long was I asleep? The butler answered respectfully, about 3.5 days, sir. Alexander raised a hand. Bring me the stack of newspapers and letters. And some whiskey. The kitten lightly tapped his cheek with its paw, as if expressing disapproval. The butler looked troubled. Whiskey? Drinking the moment you wake up. Alexander picked up a towel. I understand your concern, but I only wanted to take with the headache medicine. Have you lost your mind? A furious shout cut him off. Renee stormed into the room. She strode to the bedside. You fell from that height. You barely survived. And now you've only just opened your eyes after 3 days and already want to drink? Alexander looked at her with a complicated expression. Renee turned to the butler. Gabriel, absolutely no alcohol. Call Dr. Loops at once and prepare something light for him to eat. The butler bowed. Yes, madam. He left the room and the door closed softly. Renee stood by the bed. Thankfully, your fever has gone down. Until the doctor allows it, no drinking and no smoking. Alexander clicked his tongue impatiently. Don't be ridiculous. Renee looked straight at him. My dear, if you've hurt someone's feelings, you should at least pretend to be sorry. Alexander looked baffled. What? Renee's voice carried a trace of sarcasm. Or are you still putting on airs? Alexander fell silent. A faint smile barely tugged at his lips. He covered his forehead with one hand and let out a weary sigh. All right, but his tone shifted. I have one condition. Renee looked at him. A condition? Alexander said, I saved your precious cat. I should get something in return, shouldn't I? The cat rubbed against Renee's leg and let out a soft meow. Sunlight shone brightly outside the window. She stared into the distance. Let's go on a date. Renee's pupils shrank. What? Alexander turned back to her. Is that really so surprising? I just want you to buy me a meal. Just once. A flicker of surprise passed through Renee's eyes. Like you said, I came back from the dead. Don't you think I deserve at least that? Alexander turned his face slightly, a hard-to-read smile lifting his lips. The handwriting of a letter surfaced in memory. To my dearest Renee, my beloved niece. I hope you're well in that unfamiliar city. Thanks to you, Whitehall Orphanage is thriving. Recently, the number of children has increased again. There are about 30 now. But don't worry, we are still managing somehow. Actually, I want to entrust one child to you. There's a slight problem with his eye. He needs treatment. He is clever, capable, diligent, and strong, and he's reached the age when he should learn to stand on his own. If he can receive treatment and find work, that would be ideal. Please take care of Gordon. With all my love, your uncle. Renee rubbed her temples. Uncle, how could you send a child here so carelessly? Gordon stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to his chest as he bowed slightly. Renee looked up. I got so absorbed in reading that I didn't realize you'd already arrived. He smiled gently. Long time no see, Gordon. Have you been well? Gordon Rouse looked up. Yes, thanks to you, I'm doing well. Renee looked at the boy before her. I heard you came because of your eye. What happened? Gordon took off his hat, looking a little awkward. Well, actually I got caught up in a fight. I was injured. About 2 years ago, the orphanage became crowded and chaotic. One night, I went to the washroom and saw outsiders sneaking into the girls' dormitory. Just in case, I followed them. In the end, I drove them off, but my eye was injured at the time. A shadow passed over Gordon's face. It was just bad luck. He quickly added, but thankfully the girl was unharmed. Renee's gaze froze. Thankfully, he actually called it fortunate. He brushed off his own sacrifice as nothing more than bad luck. With that one sentence alone, I understood what kind of child he was. Renee's expression softened. I understand. What you did was truly admirable. I'll find a hospital for you as soon as possible. In the meantime, do you have somewhere to stay? Gordon's answer made Renee blink. What? Gordon looked at her blankly. Renee was equally taken aback. What? Lowering her head, she muttered, I see. Uncle, you really sent him here without arranging anything. And now the marriage contract is about to expire too. If the orphanage keeps being run this recklessly, can I really keep holding everything together? Gordon stood there uneasily. I'm sorry. The director didn't tell me anything else. Renee let out a bitter laugh. What am I even thinking? She drew a deep breath. No, don't overthink it. No matter what, I just have to work harder. Light returned to Renee's eyes. She made up her mind. First, let's go find you a place to stay. Renee drove Nina out. The butler reported to Alexander. Yes, Madam handled it personally. Through Mr. Lewis, she arranged a hotel and sent Miss Nina and Melinda there. Alexander rested his chin on one hand. I don't believe Nina would leave quietly. The butler confirmed his suspicion. Yes, she insisted she was innocent until the very end. But Madam was firm. Miss Nina lost control and slapped Madam. Alexander sprang up. What? Rage flashed across his face. Who does she think she is? Nina twisted her face viciously. What are you to dare throw me out? Renee looked at her coldly. That won't change the outcome. Nina, if you insist you're innocent, then I'll hand Melinda over to the police. I may not be able to punish you legally for plotting against my cat, but I absolutely can punish you for stealing my belongings. Melinda panicked. Miss Nina, Nina shot her a sharp look. Even if you don't confess, the evidence against Melinda is already enough. The moment I report it, she'll never leave prison. Melinda's face instantly turned pale. Renee's voice was icy. Why aren't you saying your goodbyes already? Nina trembled all over, her teeth chattering. She raised her hand and struck hard. The crisp sound of the slap rang out. Renee's face snapped to the side. The servants gasped, but Renee did not back down. She grabbed Nina's wrist at once and slapped her back. Clutching her cheek, Nina stared at her in disbelief. Renee's gaze was cold as iron. If you hit someone, be prepared to be hit back. Nina screamed in fury, Renee Hatherland. Renee shot back without yielding, Nina Shambell. Looking down at her, Renee said, it's Renee Shambell. Nina, I didn't call you Nina Anastasia, did I? So you ought to show me some respect as well. Goodbye. Nina held her cheek and glared at Renee unwillingly. Roy reported to Alexander. Madam's presence was overwhelming. In the past 2 years, I've never seen her like that. Alexander touched his lower lip with his fingertips, a smile curling at the corner of his mouth. That temper, really. He recalled the past. Renee had been sitting on top of him, pouting as she grabbed his collar. Alexander murmured, she hasn't changed at all. Josie smiled. I was wondering how long she'd keep enduring it. After all, they did something so cruel to those little ones. Renee did very well as the mistress of the house. Alexander's eyes turned cold. He ordered the butler, make a list of every one of Renee's belongings Melinda touched. Then he continued, the current commissioner of the Royal Police is Count Sterling, correct? The butler bowed. Yes. He is also an old friend of the general and of the old madam. Alexander added, he's grandmother's friend too. The butler agreed. Of course, the salon the old madam ran in her youth was very famous. You'd be surprised by the connections she still has. Josie smiled calmly. That was all in the past. Alexander looked at Josie. They say that in Kalivar, the size of every social gathering depended on whether grandmother attended. She used to be the center of high society and was close to Her Majesty the Queen. The reason she no longer leaves the estate is because of my father's death. Determination flashed in Alexander's eyes. He told Josie, Nina's punishment will be left to my wife. If she comes back to the estate again, I'll throw her out myself. Josie watched him stand. Oh my, you're leaving already? Alexander straightened his cuffs. I slept too long. Too much work piled up. I'm sorry for worrying you. Josie smiled with relief. Yes, as long as you're safe, that's what matters. Take care of your health. Alexander turned and left, the door closing softly behind him. He walked alone down the corridor, his steps heavy. He let out a sigh and leaned against the wall in exhaustion. He took a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside were several candies and a note. He picked up the note and glanced over the writing. For the patient who would definitely break his promise to stop at 10. If you want to drink or smoke, eat one of these instead. This was prepared by your wife, whiskey-flavored candy, perfectly suited to a patient's taste. Alexander put one into his mouth. The aroma of whiskey spread instantly. Surprise flashed in his eyes, and then he couldn't help but laugh. The butler looked at him. Master, what's wrong? Alexander laughed even harder. He handed the note to the butler. The butler took it, looking confused. He watched Alexander turn and head lightly toward the office. Alexander murmured, my wife really is remarkable. Renee walked down the street. This main road is the center of Bookstore Street. There are also several newspaper offices here. It's full of intellectuals, so the public security should be decent. Gordon followed beside her and answered softly. Yes. Gordon looked at the cars on the street, his cheeks slightly red. This is the first time I've seen so many cars. Renee looked at him gently. When I first came to Kalivar, everything fascinated me too. She took out a note from her bag. The address of the rental office. It should be right here. Suddenly, a man bumped into Renee. She staggered, and the note fluttered to the ground. The man quickly apologized. I'm sorry. Renee hurriedly replied, no, it was my fault. She crouched down to pick up the note, but the man reached for it at the same time. The man looked up, eyes full of surprise. Mrs. Chambel, Renee recognized him too. Mr. Littley. Leffers broke into a bright smile. How lovely to see you here. Mrs. Chambel. Renee smiled back. Yes, it's lovely to see you too. Leffers returned the note to Renee. Renee introduced Gordon beside her. This is Gordon, a new employee of our Hatherland. I came out today to find a place for him to stay. Leffers said with interest, oh, the company president personally finding housing for an employee? He commented, he must be an excellent employee. Renee laughed lightly and explained, haha, Gordon used to be one of the top students at our orphanage. You've been there too, sir. In fact, my company, Hatherland, was founded for the children of Hatherland Orphanage. Leffers was surprised. A company founded for the orphanage children? Renee's eyes shone. Yes, I believe that as the founder of the orphanage, I have a responsibility to create opportunities for the children so that one day they can stand on their own in this world. She added a little shyly, though I still lack experience. Gordon will become a truly excellent employee too, right? Gordon replied firmly, I'll do my best. Leffers praised her sincerely. That's truly admirable. Mrs. Chambel. Renee looked slightly puzzled. Leffers smiled. Ever since I saw you at the orphanage, I've thought so. The relationship you have with the children is truly beautiful. Renee looked a bit embarrassed. Thank you for thinking so. Leffers changed the subject. You said you were looking for a place to stay. There happens to be a vacant employee dormitory nearby. If you don't mind, I'd be happy to lend it to you. Renee quickly shook her head in refusal. What? No, we couldn't trouble you like that. Leffers reassured her, please don't feel burdened. It just became vacant, and I was wondering what to do with it. More importantly, I'd like to offer this small gesture of sincerity to someone with a heart as noble as yours, Mrs. Chambel, and do my best to become as admirable as you. Renee was deeply moved, her eyes shimmering. The two of them bowed deeply to Lefris. "Thank you so much, Mr. Littley." Lefris laughed and waved his hand. "Haha," that said, "you should still see it for yourself and decide if you like it." He turned and gestured. "It's right nearby. Let's go take a look." Renee and Gordon followed behind him as the three of them walked together down the sunlit street. A shutter clicked. A man in a hat used an old-fashioned camera to take a picture of their backs. He quickly adjusted the camera and took another shot. The man lowered the camera and watched the three of them walk away, a cold smile tugging at his lips. Renee sat at her desk, her eyes on the report. At this rate, the company will never stabilize before the divorce. Suddenly, a voice sounded behind her. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Renee whipped around. "Alexander?" she asked shakily. "What are you doing here so late?" Alexander's lips curved upward. "You forbid me from working because I'm a patient, yet here you are staying up all night yourself." He leaned closer. "I came purely out of indignation to drag you back to the bedroom." His gaze fell to the documents. "Is this about the orphanage?" Renee pressed a hand over the papers. "Not that, wait. This wasn't about pride. Alexander was a widely recognized successful businessman. On the contrary, this was a good opportunity." Renee spoke. "There's something I want to ask you. The orphanage's expenses are growing faster than the company. If you were me, what would you do?" Alexander was taken aback. "I didn't expect you to ask me that. Since it's a rare opportunity, I'll answer." His finger tapped lightly on the desk. "If you want to win more, you have to enlarge the board. My style isn't to sit around waiting for the existing market to grow. From Whitehall to Calivar, and after that, of course, cultivating scarcity based on the product's characteristics may be more profitable. But if I were managing Hatherland right now, I would seek out more markets." Renee repeated his words. "Expand the market." Until now, she had only focused on opening stores and had never thought beyond that. "I think I've been trapped in a mental blind spot. Now I have to consider the next step." Alexander picked up one of the documents. "Finding investors to enlarge the board shouldn't be difficult, should it?" A flash of understanding crossed Renee's eyes. She smiled. "Thank you, but I can't rely on the Shambells forever." Alexander froze. "What?" Renee admitted, "I'm going to divorce soon. I can't keep depending on the Shambell support. I need to find a new path." She looked at the papers, her gaze resolute. Alexander reached out and covered the document with his hand. "You don't have to cut things off so completely." Alexander's tone was flat. "I can fund the orphanage as needed." Renee challenged him. "Why?" "We're getting divorced. Why would you fund Hatherland Orphanage?" "I understand your attitude, less and less lately. You pretend to take revenge for me, then turn around and remind me of fake wife's duties. Then you risk your life to save my cat. Do you realize you almost died? And now you're saying you'll support the orphanage. How am I supposed to understand your true intentions? Were they really?" Alexander turned his face aside. "I only did what I wanted to do. Lauren Height's actions and Nina's scheme both displeased me. You seem to want some special reason, but supporting the orphanage means nothing to me. I can do it, so I did." At last, Renee asked the question she'd always wanted to ask. "There's something I wanted to ask you for a long time. Why did you come to me in the first place? You abandoned me and left me with nothing. You disappeared without a word, and then suddenly came back. Why?" Alexander turned away. "I just needed a wife. That's all." Again, that answer again. Renee stared at his retreating back. "You're always like this. You appear out of nowhere. But when I try to get close, you turn and walk away. Why give me hope? Why shake me like this?" Renee suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm. She demanded loudly, "You could have chosen anyone. Could it be you actually wanted to see me?" Alexander's pupils contracted sharply. He remembered the Renee bathed in sunlight, smiling brilliantly, and the Renee crying that he had ruined everything. The fragments of memory stabbed at him. At last he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Yes, I wanted to see you very much." Renee froze. "What?" Alexander held her hand. "I didn't have the courage to apologize for the past, so I used marriage as a miserable excuse to bring you back. Is it the answer you wanted?" Renee's eyes widened in shock. Alexander pressed Renee beneath him. "Renee, does it really matter that much? We aren't the same as we were in the past. What I've done doesn't matter anymore. Does the past really matter that much?" Renee bit down hard. "I only asked something obvious. Haven't you realized how contradictory you are?" Alexander shot back. "Then let me ask you this. After hearing all that, are you still curious about me? Could it be you actually love me?" He let out a faint laugh. "So you're that curious? How cute." He leaned in closer. "Fine. Then I'll show you that I'm very interested in you." In a low voice, he asked, "Is that the answer you wanted?" Alexander lowered his head and kissed her cheek. Then he kissed Renee more forcefully. It was a kiss held back for far too long. Renee turned her head aside. "Wait, don't." She shoved Alexander away hard. "Don't touch me." Alexander straightened, a faint mocking smile on his lips. "Why not? I was about to give you the answer you were dying to know." Renee covered her lips. "You're such a bastard." Renee glared at him. "If it isn't love, then am I not even allowed to ask?" desk. Why are you avoiding the question? If it's nothing, then you could just say so. Alexander suddenly raised a hand and covered his face, roaring, because I don't want to answer. Renee grabbed Alexander by the collar in one swift motion. She kissed him forcefully. Alexander was startled at first, then closed his eyes and accepted the kiss. The two of them embraced and kissed deeply in front of the desk. After a long while, they finally broke apart. Renee pressed a hand against Alexander's chest and sneered. If that's all it is, then I've already learned more than enough. Maybe a country girl like me can't satisfy your refined tastes. She turned and left. Alexander stared after her, then slammed his fist down on the desk. He covered his face, his voice squeezing through his fingers. Something like this. Something like this. What do you understand? Footsteps echoed across the stone path. A maid led the way respectfully. Your Majesty, I have brought Mrs. Shambell. In a sunlit pavilion, the queen sat elegantly and raised her teacup. Mrs. Shambell, it has been a long time. Have you been well? Renee gave a slight curtsy. Thanks to your Majesty's grace, I am quite well. Thank you for your concern, your Majesty. The queen smiled and gestured. Please sit. Renee answered obediently, yes. The queen turned to the young woman beside her. This is my niece from Felis, Archduchess Maximut. Ark, say hello. Ark smiled. It is a pleasure to meet you. Mrs. Shambell, you're even more beautiful than I imagined. Renee smiled in return. You flatter me, your highness. The honor is mine. Ark took Renee's hand on her own initiative. Actually, I was the one who begged Her Majesty to arrange this meeting. I really wanted to meet you. Renee's eyes shifted slightly. She seemed a little surprised. Ark continued, when my older sister visited last year, you gave her some soap as a gift. Do you remember? Last year, that was when she had just started promoting Hatherland soap. For high-quality soap, she had added all kinds of fragrances, essential oils, and special packaging. When privately meeting distinguished guests, she would gift them custom-made soap. She had read an article that said the Grand Princess of Felis was extremely picky about cosmetics, so she had prepared the gift with extra care. Renee smiled. Yes, Your Highness, of course I remember. A trace of vulnerability appeared in Ark's eyes. My sister and I have suffered from skin problems since childhood. We tried everything, but nothing helped. But after using it according to the method you wrote in your letter, our skin improved noticeably. That's why I came in person to see you and to buy more of that soap. Renee smiled warmly and sincerely. I'm so happy to hear it worked. If you need it, I would gladly give it to you as a gift. Ark shook her head eagerly. No, that's not what I mean. Mrs. Shambell, have you ever considered opening a Hatherland counter in a department store in Felis? I will provide whatever support you need. Renee froze. What? Ark explained, I want to be able to buy it whenever I want. To do that, the best way would be to open a store in Felis. Hatherland soap would surely be a great success there as well. Soap this good being sold only in Kalivar. That would be such a waste. The queen lightly pressed Ark's hand. Calm down. Arkansas Ark immediately composed herself. I'm sorry. I got a little too excited. The queen turned to Renee. Ark's suggestion is sudden, but I don't think it's a bad idea. After all, for our country's products to reach the world, that is a good thing. She looked at Renee. Think it over carefully. Renee fell into thought. Expanding the business into another country. Alexander's words echoed in her mind. If you want to win more, you have to raise the stakes. If I were managing Hatherland now, I'd consider opening up more markets. How could such an opportunity fall right into my lap? Ark's earnest voice rang out again. I will give you all my support. Please give it serious consideration. With the princess's support, I won't need Alexander's help. Alexander, kissing her, forcefully flashed vividly through her mind again. Renee's cheeks instantly burned. She clutched her head. Stop thinking about it. Stop. She stood in front of the company building. When did I even get here? Did what happened yesterday make me unconsciously walk all the way here? The roar of a car engine sounded. A familiar automobile stopped by the roadside. Oh no, that was Alexander's car. Renee quickly turned and hid behind the fountain, covering her face with a newspaper. I don't want to run into him yet. Just go. Hurry and leave. The car door opened. Alexander got out, and an attendant reminded him, Sir, we've arrived. Alexander suddenly stopped walking and swept his gaze around. The attendant asked in confusion, Sir, is something wrong today? Alexander withdrew his gaze. No, it just felt like my wife was nearby. The attendant looked even more puzzled. Your wife? Hidden behind the newspaper. Renee's heart skipped a beat. How'd he know? Alexander's eyes shifted. No, it's nothing. Let's go. He walked into the building. He didn't see me, did he? Renee let out a long breath. How pathetic. I'd better hurry home. She had barely taken a step when a sharp pain shot through her ankle. Renee bent over and rubbed her reddened ankle. I should have just taken a car. I can't believe I let the driver go and walked back by myself. She stood there, annoyed and exhausted. Suddenly, a hand yanked her bag away. Her body lurched. What? Before Renee could react, the person had already snatched it and run. Wait, she cried in terror. My bag. Thief. Renee reached out and chased the disappearing figure in vain. Help. Her foot twisted and she fell heavily to the ground with a scream. Renee lay on the ground. My shoe. The thief's figure grew farther away. No, that bag. The queen's voice echoed in her mind. Could you deliver this to Josie for me? Josie is my closest friend. I heard she hasn't been well lately, so I've been very worried. Renee had answered respectfully, of course. I will personally deliver your majesty's letter to my grandmother. That letter had been handed to her directly by the queen herself. Lying on the ground, Renee stretched out a hand in despair. Please, someone, that letter. I absolutely can't lose it. A figure rushed to Renee's side. Stay here. I'll go after him. Renee looked up in shock. The person became a black blur, darting like lightning and catching up to the thief in an instant. With one clean flying kick, he knocked the thief to the ground. Renee panted where she was. You fool. After receiving something so important, you should have gone straight home. Why did you let your mind wander? Barefoot, she staggered to her feet. If that bag couldn't be recovered, everything would be over. Lefris held the bag out in front of Renee. This is yours, right? Renee looked up, eyes full of surprise. Out of breath, Lefris crouched down and handed her the bag. Renee whispered in disbelief, Mr. Littlely. Backlit by the sun, sweat ran down Lefris's face. He smiled gently. A man pointed toward Renee in the distance. See that woman? Find a chance to snatch her bag. As soon as you get it, hand over the key. The money is all yours, and you'll be able to turn your life around. But Lefris had pinned the thief firmly to the ground. The thief's face was full of terror. He never said there'd be someone like this. Damn it, who the hell is this bastard? The thief fumbled inside the bag and pulled out a key. Police officers rushed over. Are you all right? Lefris answered yes. I'm Euphina. Anxiously holding the bag, Lefris went to find Renee. The police dragged the thief away. Don't move. One officer ordered, I'll take him back. You go check on the victim. Understood. Nearby, someone gritted their teeth, eyes icy, and picked up the ornate key the thief had thrown to the ground. A hand picked up the key. Melinda watched nervously as the thief was taken away. Covered in sweat, Lefris said, Mrs. Shambell, are you all right? Still shaken, Renee looked up. Why are you here? A police officer rushed over. Are you all right? Renee shook her head. Yes, I'm all right. The officer said, that gentleman over there caught the criminal. He was so fast. If it weren't for him, I never would have caught. Lefris said awkwardly, no, it's nothing. More importantly, I got the bag back. Is anything missing? Renee hurriedly searched through it. She took out the letter. It's here. She clutched the envelope tightly. As long as this is still here, that's enough. Thank you so much. The police officer breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. If you need to go to the station, Renee refused. No, I'd rather go home. After a brief hesitation, Lefris said, Mrs. Shambell, could you wait over there for a moment? Renee looked at him. All right. The city's streets were bathed in the glow of sunset. The clock tower pointed to 6. Lefris returned with a pair of shoes and held them out to Renee. Here, I didn't know your size, so I had to guess. If they're uncomfortable, I'll go exchange them. Renee asked in surprise, Oh, where did you buy them? Lefris smiled. Luckily, there was a women's shoe store nearby. Renee sat on a bench while Lefris crouched in front of her and helped her put on the shoes. Renee thanked him sincerely. Thank you so much for everything today. I will definitely repay this kindness. Lefris waved it off. Repay me? I only did what I should have done. He stood up. You look badly shaken. Would you like me to escort you home? Renee smiled. Oh, the police already contacted the estate. My driver will be here in 30 minutes. Lefris pointed to a building across the street. In that case, that's our travel agency over there. While you're waiting, would you like to come have a look? Renee followed his finger with her gaze. A travel agency? Under the setting sun, the building's red tiles looked elegant. Renee stepped into the travel agency and was astonished by what she saw. My goodness, a place like this really exists? She walked to a table and picked up a photograph of a desert. Mr. Littlely, have you been here before? I heard deserts are unbearably hot. Lefris chuckled. Personally inspecting every travel destination is our highest principle. Only after thoroughly surveying a place do we decide whether it can be turned into a route. Let me explain while looking at the map. He pointed to a spot on the globe. This is Laville. If you sail from here all the way to here, you'll reach the Rose Desert in your photograph. Renee looked at the globe. Even looking at it like this, I still can't really grasp the distance. How long would it take by ship? And how do you travel in the desert? Lefris's gaze deepened. Even by fast ship, more than 2 months. These days trains are quicker and can cut about 2 weeks off the journey. Exotic scenery, unfamiliar cultures, All kinds of people. Renee listened, captivated, her eyes shining. Lefris continued painting the picture. Most importantly, the desert night sky is beyond imagination. People travel for all sorts of reasons. Some for curiosity, some for rest, some to escape. Everyone has their own reason. Renee's hand rested on the globe. To escape. Lefris asked, Mrs. Chambel, what would your journey be for? Renee's eyes dimmed. I can't go. Lefris asked, puzzled, why not? Renee answered, travel belongs to people who have leisure. I don't have that kind of leisure. I have too much to do. The weight of responsibility is too heavy. At the very least, I should have courage. But right now, I have nothing. But if I could go somewhere. Renee's voice brimmed with longing. I want to go somewhere completely new. Somewhere beyond anything I've ever imagined. Lefris pushed the globe toward Renee. Then please accept this as a gift. For you. Renee was startled. No, I can't accept this. Lefris said, travel isn't some grand, unattainable thing. Someday, you will set out on a wonderful journey, whether far or near. This gift is to support Mrs. Chambel's wonderful journey. Renee accepted the globe. Thank you so much. She held it tightly, as though embracing a dream she had once lost and found again. Night fell, and stars filled the sky. Alexander slammed his hand on the table. What? A thief? He glared at Lewis. Why are you only telling me now? Lewis replied calmly. You ordered that the meeting not be interrupted. You said no one was to enter until it ended. Alexander was livid. Even if I said not to interrupt the meeting, would you still stay out if a war broke out? Lewis hurriedly explained. I heard the culprit was caught on the spot, so that's why. Alexander let out a cold snort and slammed his palm down on the table. He grabbed his coat. I'm going home right now. Organize the meeting minutes. Lewis quickly answered, Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Alexander strode out, leaving papers scattered all over the floor. Lewis knelt down to gather them up. No matter how much I begged him to go home, he refused. But the moment he heard something had happened to Madam, he rushed out, looking anxious before the meeting was even over. Alexander hurried back, full of worry. He must have been terribly concerned. Night had fallen over the manor. A car slowly pulled into the estate. The butler stepped forward. Welcome back, master. Alexander took off his coat. How is my wife? Is Renee all right? The butler accepted the coat. Madam only said she was fine, then went straight to her room to rest. It seems she hasn't eaten anything today. Madam is not someone who complains. You'd better go see her. At those words, Alexander paused, then immediately ran up the stairs. The butler watched his hurried figure. Looks like I don't need to worry after all. Alexander pushed open the bedroom door. He stood there, breathing hard against the doorframe. Renee was lying quietly asleep on the bed. Moonlight spilled over her. Alexander stood by the bedside, looking at her. Her sleeping face always made him uneasy. He ran a hand irritably through his hair, and his gaze fell on Renee's bare feet. They were covered in wounds. Alexander bent down and gently took hold of her ankle. She said she was fine. That lie stabbed at him. Alexander let out a sigh. He got up, left, then returned carrying a basin of water. Squatting down, he carefully wiped the cuts on Renee's feet with a towel. It must have hurt. Did you run out barefoot? If I had answered you then, you wouldn't have gotten hurt like this. If I hadn't done that yesterday, if I hadn't tied you to my side in the first place, you wouldn't have been hurt like this. Alexander leaned over and gently stroked Renee's cheek. Renee, her brows were tightly knitted as she murmured in her sleep, It hurts. I hate you so much. Alexander froze. He lowered his head. I am sorry. Morning light filtered through the curtains. A black cat woke on the chair and jumped down. Renee stretched lazily on the bed. The white cat leapt up and rubbed against her cheek. Renee gathered it into her arms and sat up. Did you sleep well? She stroked the cat's soft fur. Why are you so clingy today? Renee suddenly froze. She looked down at her feet. They had been carefully wrapped in bandages. Who? I didn't tell anyone I was hurt. Don't tell me that wasn't a dream. There was a knock at the door. The butler entered, pushing a wheelchair. Madam, are you awake? Renee looked at him. Good morning, Gabriel. What is that? The butler stopped the wheelchair. Master sent it over. He said you were injured and that moving around would be inconvenient. What? The butler bowed slightly. Please use it until your injury has fully healed. Renee stared in disbelief. This is way too much. I was walking just fine yesterday. The butler explained. Before leaving, Master asked me to take good care of your injury. It was a request to this old servant, not an order. If he's really that worried, he could at least show his face and say something. The butler added, he also asked me to give this to you. He held out a glass jar filled with orange-yellow candies. Master said eating one when you're bored would calm both body and mind. He also said it's your favorite flavor, orange. Renee looked at the candy jar. Isn't this the candy I gave him? After all those words, we're not the same anymore. The past doesn't matter. Does the past really matter that much? What exactly does he want from me? Renee lowered her eyes. I'll stay in my room until my sprain heals. The butler nodded. Very well, but just in case, I'll leave the wheelchair here. Renee took out a letter from the bedside table. Could you deliver this to his grandmother for me? Her Majesty the Queen personally asked me to pass it on. The butler accepted the envelope. I'll handle it properly. I'll have your meals sent to your room. Please get some proper rest. Renee sat alone on the bed. She opened the jar, took out a candy, and put it into her mouth. The sweet tart orange flavor melted on her tongue. Those words echoed in her mind. No matter what, I'll stand by your side. Since you kissed me, you can't kiss anyone else. Renee, you're the most beautiful. Don't come looking for me again. Get out. I've had enough. Why are you so annoying today? If you're an object, but then act like one and serve your purpose. The candy jar slipped from her hand. She touched her own cheek. Stop. Don't let yourself be shaken again. There was a knock. Nina answered and entered. The door opened, and Rose stood there. Long time no see. Rose. Nina smiled. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you? You kept complaining you couldn't do it, so I had no choice but to personally help you deliver that letter. I wonder what you brought back for me. Rose's hands trembled as she clutched an envelope tightly. If I just hand this to you, my mother. Nina lifted her chin. That depends on what you've brought me, doesn't it? Rose stepped forward. Madam, I believe this will definitely be useful to you. Nina pulled out the papers inside. This is... She gave a low laugh, then burst into wild laughter. Well done, Rose. You've really done me a huge favor. She raised the document in her hand. It was a contract, and Renee's name was written on it in plain sight. So that's all it was? What determines the outcome of war are bombs falling from the sky and motorcycles as swift as lightning. I understood it then. Those things will decide the future strength of our nation. From now on, the future of the country will be led by aviation and the automobile industry. The newspaper headlines declared, following the elegant T-type car of Sombrel, the W-type will soon be unveiled. Pre-orders at the Sombrel Motor Show reach hundreds of thousands. Another paper read, Queen Mary fully supports Sombrel's automobile industry, declaring it the next generation industry of leafress. The Sombrel Motor Show, said to be the largest in history, will commercialize automobiles and spark a new revolution across all the roads of leafress. Are cars really dangerous? Protesters held signs high. Cars, get out. Families who had lost loved ones in traffic accidents protested every day. Oppose automobiles. Dr. Lopez removed his stethoscope. He was Alexander's personal physician. His tone was grave. You know it too, don't you? If this keeps up, you really will die. I thought after the last accident, you'd already quit smoking for good. But what's the point of staying awake day and night like this? Alexander leaned back on the sofa, exhausted, loosening his tie. All right, I'll be careful. Be quiet. Alexander cut him off. More importantly, how is my wife's injury? Have you seen her? Dr. Lopez picked up his medical bag. Yes, you don't need to worry about Madame Sombrel's injuries. He let out a soft sigh. The wheelchair might have been a bit much, but Madame Sombrel did ask me a favor. She said she was very worried about your condition and told me to come examine you every other day. Alexander fell silent. He was visibly startled. Dr. Lopez picked up the bottle of medicine on the table. For some reason, your headache medicine hasn't been touched at all. It seems there's no need for me to prescribe more. I'll be going now. He turned to leave. If you don't intend to make the wife who worries about you sleep alone forever, then please drink in moderation. Alexander picked up a box on the table and opened it. Inside were several candies. Since when had he stopped automatically reaching for headache medicine? Since when had he stopped replacing the cigarettes Renee had thrown away? He took one candy, unwrapped it, and put it into his mouth. There was a note Renee had left. When you want to drink or smoke, eat this candy instead. As he sucked on the candy, Alexander drifted into a fantasy. Renee gazed at Alexander gently. Do you understand? Renee's face held a faint smile in the glow. In Alexander's blue eyes, her image was reflected clearly. Alexander reached out and caught hold of Renee just as she was about to walk away. He bent down and kissed her firmly on the lips. Renee's hand rested lightly on his shoulder as she returned the kiss. Everything was bathed in tender light. Suddenly, Renee looked at him in disbelief. Alexander jolted awake from the illusion. The candy slipped from his hand, fell to the ground, and shattered. Why? He lowered his gaze to his own hand. Who? Who on earth? Which bastard? He gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles turned white. How pathetic. Alexander covered his face with one hand. What right do I have to think like this? I was the one who pushed you away. I was the one who cruelly cast you aside. That gentle touch. Do you miss me? I can't deny it. In that beautiful white hall, I once wished you wouldn't forget me. I wish you would keep waiting for me. To think I could still have such thoughts. There's little time left. I only hope that by the end, I no longer long for you. Renee set down her teacup and let out a long breath. Even with 3 days off, going back to work is exhausting. But it's such a relief having Dorothy here. Dorothy cupped her face in delight. I heard you were hurt, so I was really worried. I didn't expect you to come back with such big good news. This is no time to sit around. I need to go check the inventory right away and make sure the supply is secure. Renee raised a hand, signaling Dorothy to calm down. Hugging the files, Dorothy turned to leave. I'm going to the warehouse right now. Madam, you just handle approving the documents. Renee watched her leave. Meeting an employee as wonderful as Dorothy really is my good fortune. A voice suddenly rang out in the office. Having fun, Renee looked up sharply. Nina was standing in the doorway, arms folded, her face full of contempt. Renee's gaze turned icy. What brings you here all of a sudden? Nina looked around the room. A country bumpkin actually has an office like this in the capital, all by using someone else's resources. She walked up to the desk, a mocking smile on her face. Don't you think that's shameless? Renee clenched her hand. I asked what you came here for. Nina's smile was filled with curiosity. I just wanted to see with my own eyes whether this is the company you built by blackmailing Alexander for money. That's all you've got. Renee's voice turned cold. You're being outrageously rude. I believe I asked you to show some respect. Nina cut her off. The prenuptial agreement. Renee's pupils shrank suddenly. Nina pulled out a craft paper envelope. I can't believe something like this even exists. So this is why Alexander chose you. Nina lifted the envelope disdainfully. For something this pitiful, you dared put on airs as the mistress of the Sombrel household. The envelope slipped from her hand and drifted onto Renee's desk. Nina's voice was full of menace. If this gets out, what do you think will happen? Cinderella of Calabaldi actually sold herself for money. How does that headline sound? Nina leaned down, pressing one hand onto the envelope on the desk, her eyes cold and confident. So, are you finally willing to get out of my place, Renee? Catherine Melinda was brushing Nina's hair. I heard Her Majesty the Queen arranged another meeting between the young master and Miss Cassis. Nina suddenly whipped around. What? Melinda hurriedly bowed her head. Of course, I also heard the young master refused. Nina ground her teeth. Lately, the Queen has been trying to introduce Alexander to her granddaughter. She must have set her sights on the business Alexander still hasn't taken on a partner for. If he would just take me to a banquet, I could get rid of all these annoying problems. The butler's voice sounded from outside the door. Madam, the young master has returned. Nina jumped up from her chair. Alexander's here. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. A calculating gleam flashed through Nina's eyes. Alexander must be sick of the Queen's pressure by now. This is the perfect chance to make him take me to the banquet. Lifting her skirt, she ran downstairs, her face bright with a warm smile. Welcome back, Alexander. Are you tired today? Alexander walked straight past her. Behind him was Renee, and his hand was resting on Renee's shoulder. The smile froze on Nina's face. Her pupils widened in shock. Renee's gaze passed over her calmly. Nina stood there, stunned, watching their figures leave side by side. Who is that woman? That place should have been mine. In Nina's mind, Alexander should be looking at me like that. There's no way he could fall in love with a woman like her. Nina watched the two of them kissing at the wedding, jealousy written all over her eyes. A marriage contract surfaced in her mind. Alexander Sombrel and Renee Haselin. Marriage term, 2 years. During this period, a monthly donation shall be made to Haselin Orphanage. Divorce after 2 years. Party A shall pay alimony. Holding that contract, Nina smiled victoriously. See, there's no way Alexander could love a woman like that. She merely took advantage of the moment when Alexander was tired of the Queen's pressure and slipped in through the cracks. That thief is stealing the Sombrel family's wealth. As long as I get rid of that woman, I can take back my place by Alexander's side. Nina's thoughts returned to the present. She looked down at Renee, her tone dripping with contempt. Because you came from some poor countryside, you used something as vulgar as a fake marriage to get money? If that's the case, you should have quietly taken the money and left. What right do you have to play the role of the lady of the house? Nina's eyes blazed. Just because everyone around you calls you madam, do you really think you're the mistress of the house now? You're nothing but a fraud. Her voice grew sharper. If you don't leave Sombrel Manor immediately, I'll report this whole scam to the Queen. Renee finally spoke. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Nina, what nonsense are you talking about? Nina slammed the desk. Do you still not understand the situation? You took money and pretended to marry him. You deceived the entire nation into thinking this was some grand love story. Do you think the Queen will just stand by? She's always wanted to marry her granddaughter to Alex. Alexander Calabaldi. Cinderella of Calabaldi will become the scandal of the century. Your company and your orphanage will both be finished. Nina leaned in close, her face full of undisguised malice. If this marriage contract is made public, you probably won't care, will you? Renee slowly raised her eyes. A chill flashed through them. The marriage contract? You mean the marriage contract? Renee picked up the envelope from the desk and pulled out a document. The paper made a soft, rustling sound. She gave a quiet laugh. Nina, are you illiterate? Renee held the document up for Nina to see. It was a marriage certificate. Groom, Alexander Sombrel. Bride, Renee Sombrel. Renee's voice carried a hint of mockery. What marriage contract? What story are you making up? Nina's pupils contracted violently. She snatched the document away. This. She stared at the certificate. Her hands trembled with rage. What is this? When did you switch it out? Renee's gaze swept over Nina. Her tone was calm. Nina, you really put a lot of effort into preparing all this. You must have worked hard. A thief steals a key but leaves the money behind? No matter how you look at it, that's strange. Isn't it? Someone who didn't need a key before, but needs one now. Renee suddenly sprang to her feet, her eyes full of alarm. Andrea, find Rose immediately. It's already obvious who the culprit is. Rose was hurriedly packing her luggage. I have to get out of here as fast as I can. Rose. Renee blocked her path, her voice cold. Where are you going in the middle of the night? Rose turned in fright. Madam. Renee's gaze was as sharp as a blade. Rose, did you steal the key to my room and sneak inside? Rose hurriedly denied it. I would never. Renee's threat was undisguised. You'd better answer honestly, unless you want to take the blame for someone else. Stealing my jewelry, hiring a pickpocket, those can all become your crimes. Did you sell the document you stole from my room to Nina? Rose's fist clenched in fear. She suddenly dropped to her knees, clutching Renee's skirt hem tightly. Please, just spare me this once. I only did it because Miss Nina threatened me. Tears streamed down Rose's face. I need money to pay for my mother's medical treatment. She said if I didn't cooperate with her plan, she'd throw me out of the manor. If I get kicked out, my mother will die. Madam, please, just forgive me this once. Renee's expression grew complicated. A painful memory surged up. Her father was lying on his deathbed. Dad, I'm sorry. The young Renee was sprawled beside the bed, crying out, Dad, Dad, you can't die. Renee came back to herself and looked at the kneeling Rose. All right, Rose, I'll give you one chance. Go find Nina again. Tell her you need more time and more money. Renee handed Rose an envelope. Then, no matter what it takes, swap that document with this one. If you pull this off, I guarantee both you and your mother will be safe. Renee sat behind the desk. You went to all this trouble. So what are you planning to do now? It seems that person betrayed you too. Nina's face twisted with anger. Rose has already left with her mother. Thanks to the money you gave her, she was able to get her mother settled. Renee held up the ring on her finger. So, now that I have proof that Alexander and I are legally married, what exactly are you planning to threaten me with? A cold smile curved Renee's lips. Would you like to say that again? She displayed a document in front of Nina. Marriage certificate. Alexander Sombrel. Renee Haselin Sombrel. She showed the ring on her ring finger. So then, Renee leaned back in her chair, looking at Nina with faint amusement. What exactly do you plan to use to threaten us, Mr. and Mrs. Sombrel? Care to explain it one more time? Nina suddenly tore the paper in her hand to pieces. Don't make me laugh. Nina sneered. Legal husband and wife? Do you think stealing the contract means I'll keep quiet? I'll spread this all over high society immediately. A nobody like you became the mistress of the Sombrel house. Even without proof, people will believe you married him for money. Renee burst into laughter. Ha ha! Nina's face darkened instantly. What are you laughing at? Renee's laughter gradually subsided, her eyes full of mockery. High society? You mean high society? Her tone was openly contemptuous. You haven't even officially entered society yet. What right do you have to talk about it? As the daughter of a marquis's second wife? Or as the younger stepsister of the current marquis? Renee stepped forward, her heels clicking crisply on the floor. Nina trembled with rage. What did you just say? Renee's gaze was icy. You can't even attend a party where rumors might spread. Nina ground her teeth. Are you done? Renee folded her arms. Fine, even if you somehow managed to spread the rumor, that would mean you slandered a marquis personally invested by Her Majesty the Queen, with neither proof nor standing. And I wouldn't be the only one affected. Her eyes were cold as frost. If you're prepared to bear the consequences, then by all means try. Nina trembled all over. Then she suddenly let out a shrill scream. What do you think you're doing? And what could you possibly do? How much do you even know about Alexander? Do you understand the pain she carries? A fanatic light shone in Nina's eyes. Only I can embrace Alexander's wounds. She has already suffered enough for what she's done. Only I can soothe her guilt. A money-grubbing woman like you has no right. Renee's gaze turned sharply cold. Soothe? You call that soothing? She slapped Nina's wrist away. You claim to care about her guilt, yet you keep tearing open her old wounds and use her like a weapon to satisfy your own desires. Renee's voice shook with restrained anger. What do you know about Alexander? She pointed at Nina. From where I stand, the one who sees only money and not Alexander is you. You're nothing but a fake. What can a fake do for her? Nothing at all. Horror flashed across Nina's face. What you can do, I can do too. A faint sneer appeared on Nina's face. Anyone who heard you would think you'd actually fallen in love with her. A slight smile rose at the corners of Renee's lips. I love her. I love Alexander. Renee's gaze was steady and open. You can slander me however you like. I don't care. Alexander's whole body stiffened, emotion plain in his eyes. Long before any contract existed, I had already fallen in love with Alexander. Madness was all that remained in Nina's eyes. Lies. All of it is lies. Renee's expression did not waver in the slightest. Even if you deny it, what does that change? The paper beneath your feet won't disappear into thin air. Renee's eyes were cold and wise. Stop making a scene and go home. This marriage belongs to Alexander and me. There is no place for you in it. Nina's face twisted. Just wait. I'll find a way to drive you out. When that happens, you'll regret today. Renee collapsed onto the floor, one hand on her forehead as she let out a weary sigh. The shredded papers lay scattered on the ground like the wreckage of a farce. The sunset dyed the sky red, leaving a burning silence. Renee Haslin, that sly woman, used filthy tricks. Nina bit her nails. I can't just let this go. I need to think of something. She suddenly turned and saw someone standing across the street. Alexander? Alexander. How long had he been standing there? Alexander slowly approached. I happened to overhear your conversation with my wife. Nina's face went deathly pale. He heard everything. Could that sly Renee have even calculated this far? Nina forced herself to stay calm. Since you heard everything, that actually makes things simpler. What exactly have you done? If the Queen's pressure was becoming unbearable, you should have told me. How could you do something this absurd? Fury burned in Alexander's eyes. Even now, I warned you before. Alexander suddenly seized Nina by the shoulders. Don't let my anger outweigh the guilt I feel toward you. Alexander yanked her toward him. The fact that I don't call you Anna Shah doesn't mean you can forget your place. You have no right to interfere in my marriage. Nina stared at him in disbelief. For a fake wife you don't even love, how can you treat me like this? My life was ruined because of you, and now, because of that woman. Alexander cut her off. This is my final warning. Leave this place. He gripped Nina's wrist so tightly that a red mark formed around it. If you leave now, I'll give you enough money to live on for the rest of your life. Alexander let go and turned away, leaving only one cold sentence behind. Think it over carefully. His figure disappeared resolutely down the street. A calculating look flashed through Nina's eyes. Mother will come. Alexander turned around sharply. His whole body tensed. What? Nina's lips curled into a vicious smile. Until Mother arrives, I will never leave. Madness glittered in her eyes. Alexander, once she gets here, let's see if you still dare treat me like this. It'd be better to discuss this with Alexander first. A voice came from behind. Renee. She looked surprised. Alexander. He concealed the turmoil in his heart. Why are you here? Alexander smiled faintly. I came to pick you up. Did you forget? He blinked. You wrote me a letter saying you'd treat me to the meal you owed me today. A memory of the letter flashed past. It read, 3 days later, at the restaurant downstairs, I'll treat you to the meal I promised. Renee's memory came back. I remember now. The day Alexander treated my burn, I impulsively sent that letter. Later, the contract suddenly disappeared, and I forgot about it completely. Renee pressed a hand to her forehead in frustration, her thoughts in a mess. Alexander folded his arms and looked at her in disbelief. You really forgot? If I hadn't come to get you, you would have stood me up in spectacular fashion. Renee lowered her head in embarrassment. Alexander couldn't help laughing. Looking at the letter in his hand, he said, and here I thought that day, don't drag this out anymore. Bring the divorce papers with you. You really did tell me to bring the divorce agreement agreement in the most dramatic way possible. Renee tightened her grip on her handbag and said nothing. She took a deep breath. All right, let's go. We do need to talk. Alexander followed behind her. The two walked side by side. Dusk settled over the restaurant, and Renee and Alexander sat across from each other. The atmosphere was somewhat heavy. Alexander set down his knife and fork with a crisp clink. Renee spoke. You don't need to worry about Nina anymore. Without proof, she can't slander me however she likes. And the matter of us being legally married was handled properly as well. Alexander wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin, looking perfectly calm. Renee's eyes drifted to the sunset outside the window. But there are still too many variables. Will Nina really let it go? Rose only helped me because she was being coerced. What if Nina retaliates against her? What if Nina finds Rose and forces her to testify publicly about that marriage contract? I should have kept that contract safe from the start. Alexander spoke gently. Renee, this isn't your fault. His gaze deepened. It's mine. I failed to keep Nina in check. I'll have someone watch her for a while in case she makes any suspicious moves. And if you're worried, I'll have someone keep an eye on that woman Rose as well. We signed that marriage contract together. Alexander looked straight at Renee. Don't blame yourself too much. Renee paused, a complicated emotion flickering in her eyes. Thank you. Alexander looked around. By the way, this is a nice restaurant. I didn't expect you to know a place like this. Renee smiled. I'm glad it suits your picky taste. Renee dabbed at her mouth with a napkin. Then I suppose I should thank Mr. Lifley. Alexander's movement stopped. Mr. Lifley? Renee nodded. Yes, you met him at the last banquet, remember? He's the one who caught the thief. Later, when I thanked him, he recommended this place to me. Alexander remembered the man from that banquet in Leafris, the blonde, blue-eyed man standing on the balcony, looking gentle. Alexander lifted his wine glass, a dark look crossing his eyes. What a thoughtful man. A knock came from outside. Pardon me, we're bringing in your dessert now. The waiter pushed the cart closer. Please enjoy. The wheels of the cart clicked softly as the waiter quietly withdrew. Renee lifted her teacup. Then let's move on to the next topic. Did you bring the divorce agreement I asked you to prepare? Alexander answered calmly. I did. Alexander pushed a thick envelope across the table. Take a look. Renee picked up the envelope and weighed it in her hand. Why is this so thick? She pulled out the documents and scanned them quickly. Wait, this is absurd. Alexander leisurely took a sip of wine. Which part? Tens of thousands of hectares of land. A villa at a famous winery. A yacht. A car. And this, an island overseas. Renee's voice rose. You're giving me all of this as alimony? Are you insane? This is practically an inheritance. Anyone who saw this would think you were dying. Alexander leaned back in his chair. Once we divorce, people will pay close attention to what you take away from the Sombro family. If you take too little, people will think my assets amount to nothing. When that happens, investors will withdraw, claiming I lack capital. He shrugged. It's not as if I'm giving away everything I own. I'm giving these to you, so just take them. Renee stared at him in disbelief. Just how rich are you? Alexander let out a soft laugh. If I told you, you'd only ask for more, wouldn't you? Renee looked utterly confused. Why are you so determined to give me more? You really are strange. She let out a long breath. I'll take a reasonable amount, but this is far too much. I can't accept it so easily. Alexander said flatly. Take it, Renee. Don't think too much. This is simply the fair price of our deal. A faint smile tugged at Alexander's lips, while Renee looked at him with a complicated expression. A deal. Yes, we made a deal, and this is the payment for it. Alexander interrupted her. So let's end the alimony discussion here. Let's talk about the next matter. Alexander's gaze deepened. As you know, the motor show is almost here, followed immediately by the launch of the new model. During that period, for the sake of the company, I want to avoid any personal scandal. Renee tapped her chin lightly, lost in thought. Alexander proposed his plan. So, I want to proceed with the divorce, but extend the contract by about 6 months. Renee stared at him in disbelief. You want to extend the contract? You want me to stay by your side again through that tense, drawn-out stretch of time? Renee's shadow overlapped with Alexander's like a silent confrontation. She let out a cold laugh, then broke into uncontrollable laughter. Ha. Alexander watched her in silence, his blue eyes unreadable. Renee's laughter stopped abruptly. She closed her eyes briefly and said in an unyielding voice, there will be no delay. Her fingers tapped the tabletop, producing a crisp sound. Her eyes were firm. There's no room for negotiation. She touched her chin lightly. I have no choice but to admit it. Alexander, your meaningless smiles, your teasing, every brief touch, all of it is shaking my heart. Anyone who didn't know better would think you'd really fallen in love with her. Renee trembled suddenly. I love Alexander. I've fallen in love with you. But you don't love me. If this continues, your insincere behavior will only make me completely betray my first love. I'm being bound. Alexander froze. What? Renee gazed at him steadily. You said the one who could be used and abandoned without guilt, the one who desperately needed your help, was me. But now I no longer desperately need your help. That means I don't want to renew the contract. I've also received some things, so I agree to delay submitting the papers by about 3 months. But I'll move out immediately and make it look as though our separation has already begun. Alexander clenched his fist. It wasn't a bad suggestion. There was really no reason to refuse, was there? Renee's eyes were cold. That's enough. It's not a proposal I particularly need. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I also need time to start over. A flicker crossed Alexander's eyes. Start over? A cold smile touched his lips. You want a divorce, and now you're talking about starting over? Renee folded her hands together. To be honest, I don't have any special plans after the divorce. Just like now, I'll keep running Hazelin. I'll probably be busy taking care of my uncle and the children at the orphanage. Those children only have me. I have to protect them, so I can't collapse. I'll spend all the alimony you give me doing all the things I never got to do before. But stories like this are miserable and messy. I never want to tell you about them. I'll go traveling. I'll go on crazy shopping sprees. Oh, right, I should even go on dates. The ex-wife of a rich man, a wealthy divorced woman. Aren't men crazy about titles like that? Alexander let out a hollow laugh. Renee took a sip of tea. Since I hold such a marvelous title, perhaps I should indulge myself for a year or two and do all the things I never did with my ex-husband, completely without restraint. Wild, reckless. Alexander pierced right through a lie. You're not interested in any of that. Renee raised her teacup. No, I'm very interested. Do you know how curious I am? I'll try everything. Every last thing. Alexander. Renee stumbled upright. Wait, Alexander. He dragged her toward the door. Renee asked anxiously, where are you suddenly taking me? This train will terminate at Kyria Station. All passengers, please disembark. A knock came from outside the carriage door. Sir, you need to get off now. Largo mater softly. His hand was on the woman's neck and shoulder. The woman stopped him. Largo, enough. Stop it. Damn it. Always interrupted at the best part. Largo yanked the carriage door open. The attendant recoiled in alarm. Largo seized the attendant by the collar. I told you I was busy. How can you be this loud and this irritating? The attendant stammered, sir. If you keep this up, shut up. Don't make a fuss. He straightened his collar. Fine. I get it. The two of them stepped down onto the platform. For some reason, nothing here seemed to have changed. The woman walking ahead was Maggie Sombrel, Nina's birth mother. Maggie smiled. Has it been 2 years since Alexander's wedding? The man beside her was Largo Hoban, Maggie's lawyer and lover. He replied lazily, 2 years isn't long enough to change much. Largo lifted the suitcase. Damn it, I'm basically a servant. Maggie walked toward a carriage and called to the driver. Hey, can you load the luggage? The driver smiled eagerly. Of course, beautiful lady. Where are you headed? Largo followed after her. Where to? Nina's place? Maggie shot him a cold look, and Largo instantly shut up. With a cold smile on her lips, she flicked out a gold coin. To the Sombrel house in the West District. That ill-bred daughter-in-law needs to be taught a proper lesson. Beneath the night sky, the city roared with the sound of engines. Alexander was driving, the atmosphere inside the car heavy. Renee turned her head. Where exactly are we going? He never tells me anything, she thought. Alexander spoke. To see your mother. Renee's pupils shrank abruptly. Get out. Murderer. With a loud bang, the driver stared ahead in alarm. Madam, the protest is especially intense today. Renee lowered the newspaper, fear on her face. Don't worry. It'll be suppressed soon enough. The crowd blocked the road, shouting, cars are killing machines. Just because you have money, does that mean you can kill people with these things? A man roared. My son was killed by a car. Get out. Murderers. Renee's eyes fell to the newspaper. The headline was shocking. Anti-automobile protests intensify. Fear of new things gives birth to hatred of cars. After meeting Alexander, I quickly grew used to automobiles. But this world still isn't ready to accept change. On the streets, people and vehicles are all mixed together. Carriages and cars run side by side in utter disorder. Once the motor show ends and Sombrel automobiles officially go on sale, the person they will hate most will be Alexander. Noticing his stiffness, Renee said, what is it? Who's supposed to be worrying about whom? She took a deep breath. All right, tell me where we're going. A hint of a smile touched Alexander's lips. Why? Are you worried I'm going to dump you somewhere in the wilderness? Renee said nothing. She turned her gaze away. Alexander's eyes were deep, the corners of his lips curving slightly. We're almost there. The car crossed a bridge and drove on through the night. Alexander stopped the car. "We're here. Get out." A villa stood in the darkness, surrounded by thick woods. Renee looked around. "What place is this?" Alexander answered evenly. "A place I won a few months ago at the gambling table." Renee stared at him in disbelief. "What?" Alexander opened the car door and held out his hand. "Come down and take a look." He put an arm around her and slowly guided her forward, step by step. Renee stood there, whispering in disbelief, "Oh my God." Renee's pupils suddenly contracted, reflecting a sea of purple, an endless field of lavender blooming quietly in the night. It was like a dream. Renee clasped both hands to her chest, her eyes shining. "It's so beautiful." Alexander gazed at her. The former owner of this villa built this garden because his wife loved lavender. But the child who inherited it lost it over a mere gambling debt. "I want it from him." Alexander led Renee to the table and pressed gently on her shoulders for her to sit. Then he turned and walked toward the villa. "Wait a moment." Renee watched him go, and then returned carrying a cardboard box. She looked utterly confused. In a lavender field under the night sky, a small table was lit by candlelight, laid out with wine and food. Alexander gently draped a blanket over Renee's shoulders. Her cheeks flushed red. She caught hold of Alexander's collar. "Alexander." Renee's voice trembled slightly. "We're in the middle of discussing a divorce, and then you suddenly bring me here. What exactly does this mean?" Alexander looked straight at her and slowly said, "Do whatever you want to do. Date, be intimate, live recklessly." He picked up the bottle and poured red wine into a stem glass. He raised the glass, a faint smile curling at his lips. "I'll help you." Renee stared at him in shock. Renee's hand suddenly trembled. "We're about to get divorced." "Alexander, why are you suddenly acting like this?" Alexander said nothing. He lifted the glass and drained it in one swallow, leaving only a meaningful look behind. "Nothing is interesting anymore. If this goes on, I feel like I'll blow my own head off. I once swore I would never surrender to this miserable life, never become like my mother." But Alexander lay in the bathtub, the water rippling softly against his body. He stared blankly at the ceiling. Drops of water slid down from his temples into the cold bath water. If things really continue like this. In the darkness, a vision of Renee appeared. She reached out her hand, as if calling to him. "Suddenly, you broke into my thoughts. Those summers the first spent with you, not a single moment was boring. I wanted to know whether things would have been different if I had met someone like you. So I found you." Alexander stood by the sea, looking down at Renee, sitting on the beach. "Just looking at you is already interesting enough. Renee, the way you react to me. Am I longing for someone like you? I don't know how you've lived these past 2 years, but for me, at least, there wasn't a single boring moment." Renee asked in disbelief, "You don't hate me?" Alexander stared at her. "I never hated you. Not for a single moment." Renee clenched her fists. "Then why?" Renee seized Alexander by the wrist and shouted, "Then why for the past 2 years have you done nothing but speak harshly to me? Why? When I came to see you, did you refuse to meet me? You said you were sick of me. You told me to get lost." Alexander looked stunned. "What are you talking about? You came to see me? Sick of you? I never said anything like that." Fury flared in Renee's eyes. "Liar. The winter the manor burned down. I came to see you." Renee stood alone outside the cold iron gate, staring into the estate beyond it. "You refused to see me no matter what. I asked someone to deliver you a note." The iron gate creaked open, and a man dressed as a butler appeared. He handed Renee a slip of paper. Renee took it with trembling hands. On it was Alexander's resolute handwriting. "Don't come looking for me again. Get lost. I'm sick of you." Renee's voice shook with anger. "You hurt me like that, and now you're saying you never did it?" Alexander interrupted her. "Wait." He pressed a hand to his forehead, his memory in disarray. "I wrote you a note? What exactly did it say?" Renee answered blankly. "What? You said you were sick of me and told me to get lost." Alexander held his forehead and let out a cold laugh. His gaze turned sharp, almost crazed. "Now, this is interesting. Renee, that note wasn't written to you." Renee's pupils shrank. "What do you mean?" Alexander lowered his head. "That note was written to Nina. That girl stole something of mine." A whip lashed across a girl's calf, leaving behind a bright red welt. She cried out in pain. "I really didn't steal Miss Nina's things." The head maid roared, still talking back. "Let's see how long you can keep that up." Outside the door, Two maids whispered to each other. Did she really steal Miss Nina's jewelry? Impossible. She was the young master's personal maid in the study. She's never even been to Miss Nina's room. A few days ago, the young master even gave her some chocolate he'd received, and she was happy about it all day. Nina sat at her dressing table, absently combing her hair. Oh, sorry. I thought I'd lost it, but it turns out it was in my room after all. In any case, she clearly has no wish to stay any longer, so why not just let her go? The girl and her mother, carrying their luggage, were watched coldly by the head maid as they disappeared out the door. Alexander. Nina suddenly appeared, smiling. She reached out and caught Alexander's arm. Give me the chocolate Viscountess sent you. That girl's gone now, so there's no one to give it to. So give it to me instead. All right. Rage blazed in Alexander's eyes. He clenched his jaw and said nothing. A fake little sister had stolen my mother's place. Nina had an unhealthy obsession with me. I loathe her. The handwriting on the note was ice cold. Never come back. Get lost. I'm sick of you. Stop bothering me. You disgust me. That note was what I wrote to Nina back then. Alexander rested his forehead against his hand. How did it end up in your hands? A flash of ruthlessness crossed his eyes. I didn't expect someone to pull a trick like that in between. He took a deep breath and held Renee's hand. Renee, there's one thing I can say for certain. I never once thought of you that way. Raindrops began to fall, one drop after another, and soon the rain grew heavier. Alexander said softly, "It's raining." He tightened his grip on her hand. "Let's go inside first." Renee looked at him. "Alexander." Renee steadied herself against the doorframe. "Looks like we won't be going back today. Could all of this have been planned?" Even the way he suddenly brought that matter up. Alexander sat with his bare back, facing her on a chair. He spoke coldly. "Don't come over here." Renee stopped at the doorway. "What?" Renee was wearing a soaking wet nightgown, her whole body radiating temptation. "The way you look right now is extremely improper." Alexander's voice was hoarse. "Don't come any closer. Otherwise, I might harass you again. Stay there." Renee's cheeks reddened. "You could also choose not to harass me." A smile tugged at Alexander's lips. "Then I may as well blindfold myself. That would be simpler." Renee bit her lip. "You're really the worst." She turned her face away. The sound of rain outside went on without end. Renee asked softly, "Are you all right?" Alexander turned slightly. "What is it?" "I heard from your grandmother. About your mother. And why you hate rainy days." Alexander's fists tightened, his knuckles turning white. His voice sank low. "Is that so? So you heard." There was a trace of apology in Renee's eyes. "I am sorry. I shouldn't have asked so rashly." Alexander's gaze softened. "You don't need to apologize." "Renee, I'm fine now. There's nothing here. No gramopone. No music. I always knew my mother's emotions were unstable. Father grew tired of her only 2 years into the marriage, and she was always alone. They argued almost every day. The more fiercely they fought, the more she depended on me." Young Alexander stood by the door, watching his parents quarrel. His mother asked, "Alexander, do you hate me too? You have to be the only one who loves me." So I ran away to Whitehall, even though I knew she needed me with her. I understood that, and yet I still left her alone. Renee's breath caught. "So that day, if I hadn't come to see you." Alexander cut her off. No, his gaze was firm. "That was my misfortune. It had nothing to do with you." Renee started to speak, but Alexander continued. "Yes, it was my misfortune. I didn't want it to stain you. No matter what happens, don't ever shrink back because of me. I'm not someone who can proudly stand before you." Renee's voice trembled. "Then why are you saying all this now? It's been 2 years. We haven't done anything. We never tried to understand each other, never showed each other our real selves. Now that the end is almost here, only now do you open your heart." Alexander murmured, "That's because one absurd thing you said made me lose all reason. I forgot I was supposed to push you away. Even before the contract, I was already in love with you, Renee. I used to think that staying by your side would only bring misfortune. Renee, I also gave you enough material support as promised in the contract. Do even trivial things like this have to be handled by me now? Just because you became my legal wife, did that make you think you were my real wife? I spent so long pushing you away cruelly. I needed time to begin again. But when that moment truly came, I was so angry I forgot everything. Because this is the end." Renee gripped her night clothes tightly. "Yes, you're right. Our contract marriage should end here." Then, Renee suddenly stepped forward and kissed him hard. Her heart pounded wildly. She was breathing hard, cheeks flushed. I want to do as I please for once. At least in the end, you were honest." Renee turned as if to leave. Then, "Good night." Alexander suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. Renee cried out, "Wait." Alexander pushed Renee down onto the bed. She let out a short gasp. He bent down and kissed her more deeply. Renee's hand slid up to his neck, answering his passion. Alexander was breathing hard, desire surging in his blue eyes. He said in a low voice, "I'm not letting you go." The night deepened, and everything fell silent. Bare-chested, Alexander held Renee tightly in his arms. Eyes closed, Renee drowned in the kiss. Her breath was stolen away, and only a muffled whimper escaped her lips. I loved so deeply and hated so deeply. To go on living like this. If only you could have been honest just once instead of hiding all the time. Alexander flushed and asked, "Is this all right? The real you that you're only showing me now makes the past 2 years feel so unfair." Renee's eyes were unfocused, her breathing ragged. Sweat dampened her temples. Her fingers lightly stroked his cheek. "Since the ending is already decided." A flicker of surprise crossed Alexander's eyes. His voice was hoarse. "If you don't want this, I won't force you." A trace of resolve showed in Renee's smile. Just like the contract said, Alexander's jaw tightened. He closed his eyes as if restraining something. He lowered himself and found Renee's lips again. Golden hair spilled across the pillow. Renee's fingers traced his cheek. The corners of her eyes tinged red. Morning light streamed through the window onto the disheveled bed. "I want to confirm every feeling you've hidden." A sharp slap rang out. The maids behind them covered their mouths in horror. Maggie shouted sternly, "Gabriel, move aside. How dare you block my way?" The butler answered humbly but firmly, "I'm very sorry. My answer is the same as before. Madam may enter, of course. But without the master's permission, Miss Nina cannot come in." Maggie looked at him disdainfully. "I said I'll take responsibility. Move." A trace of helplessness appeared on the butler's face. "Unless the master withdraws the order, I cannot do that." Maggie flew into a rage. "Then go get her permission." Lego stood there holding a vase and murmured admiringly, "Just as expected of you." "Impressive." The butler rubbed his swollen cheek and explained politely, "The master is in a meeting at the moment and cannot be reached. Your sudden visit cannot be received properly." Maggie let out a cold laugh. "So what you're saying is, I'm supposed to wait until Alexander contacts you?" Footsteps sounded. Andrea hurried over, panting. The message was delayed. "I just got here." Andrea froze when he saw the scene. Inwardly, he cried out, "Gabriel." Maggie demanded, "Are you going to stop Nina too?" "I am. After all, Alexander's legal mother." Andrea's eyes widened in fury. "How dare you? How dare you say something like that?" Andrea fell into memory. A voice came from the distance. "Andrea!" Blair came running in from outside. Andrea looked at the newcomer in delight. "Madam, you're back." Blair introduced her. "I have a guest. Maggie, a new friend introduced by Baroness Anna Shawwatton. She, like me, married into this country. We get along very well." Standing at the foot of the stairs, Andrea watched them with a complicated expression. Blair smiled. "I think we're going to become the best of friends." A strange gleam flashed in Maggie's eyes, like a predator locking onto its prey. That moment seemed to foretell Blair's future fate. Andrea bowed slightly. "The master has given orders. Without his permission, Miss Nina may not enter this residence. Even if you bring her here personally, madam, that changes nothing." Maggie gave a dismissive snort. Her face was full of contempt. Rage boiled inside her. "Look at these insolent servants. So the times have changed? Mere servants dare defy me, a noble bearing the Chambel name." She grabbed Andrea by the chin, her gaze vicious. "Do I have to whip you the way I used to? Stop! Stop this at once." Josie hurried over. Andrea cried out, "Madam!" Josie shouted, "What exactly is going on?" "The moment you arrive here, you lay hands on the staff of this house." Maggie lifted her head and met the old woman's icy stare. "Long time no see, mother." Josie's tone was severe. "I told you before, a loose woman has no right to bear the Chambel name." The name Chambel pierced Maggie like a thorn. Grinding her teeth, Maggie spat, "Damn the Chambel name." She looked up at Josie. "You haven't changed at all." Josie tightened her grip on the handrail. "What is so great about that Chambel name? Anyone who is willing to crawl into a filthy room just to get it has no right to say such things." Maggie let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, me? Wasn't it the man who was born with that noble name who shamelessly slept with his wife's friend?" Josie was furious. "Your mouth is still as filthy and disgusting as ever." Maggie did not back down in the slightest. "You've always looked down on me like this. Even someone as lowly as me finds it suffocating." Anger burned in Josie's eyes, but Maggie's smile only widened. "It's a pity you only flinched. Wouldn't it be better for both of us if your blood pressure spiked and you dropped dead? Isn't that right, mother? You're the one who's near the grave now." Josie remained expressionless. That's not certain. Death doesn't come in order. If youth meant dying later, my son would not have left us the way he did. Maggie turned away, her back resolute. Fine, then take that noble name of yours into the grave. Whatever affection remained between us is over. Now I only want to leave. She barked, Lego. Lego wore an ingratiating smile. Of course, after I take the share that belongs to me. Maggie smiled coldly and unfolded a will. On it was written, I, Josie Shambell, wish for Maggie Shambell and Nina Shambell to legally inherit certain assets after my death. This will is left as proof. Josie trembled all over, pointing at the document. What is that? Lego cleared his throat and began to read aloud, including various real estate holdings, the Shambell family jewels, bonds, and even cash. In short, half of the Shambell family fortune will be inherited by Mrs. Maggie Shambell, and also the Shambell Manor in Calabar. Gabriel shouted, That's absurd. I've never heard of such a will. Maggie wore a provocative smile. Go ahead, verify it however you like. Andrea took the will with trembling hands. This is Marquis Bisson's. Maggie turned to leave. Tell Alexander to sort out his father's estate properly. A cold smile tugged at Maggie's mouth. I'll be waiting for him at Nina's hotel. As a dutiful son, he must come fetch his own mother. With a loud bang, the door slammed shut. Josie swayed and collapsed backward. The maids cried out and rushed to support her. Madam! Josie slumped onto the stairs, eyes closed, face deathly pale. Gabriel rushed to her side. Madam, are you all right? Gabriel shouted in panic. Quick, call the doctor! Outside, the rain beat sharply against the windows. Standing by the bed, Gabriel asked softly, How is the old madam? A maid kept watch beside the bed. She just took her medicine. She's finally fallen asleep. Her expression was heavy. This manor, the old madam's whole life. The late master built it for her with his own hands. She gave birth to her children here. Under the sunlight, a young couple stood side by side, gazing at the grand estate. It had been the beginning of their happiness. The maid's voice was sorrowful, and then she watched them leave, one by one. Anger blazed in the maid's eyes. How could that woman? The maid stood up. Oh dear, I'll go get a wet cloth. She hurried away. Andrea wiped Gabriel's cheek. Gabriel, why don't we contact the young master? Gabriel lowered his eyes. This is the first time they've gone out together to enjoy time alone. He turned and looked at the portraits on the wall. There was one of his late master, one of Alexander as a baby, one of him cuddling a little pony, one of him sitting on his grandfather's shoulders. Each one captured a moment of Alexander's childhood. Alexander had once looked at him earnestly. I want to give her a gift. Please help me. Do you think she'll like it? Gabriel had answered with a smile. Of course, young master. In Alexander's blue eyes shone a light of anticipation, like stars in a summer night sky. But that light vanished in an instant. His pupils shrank in terror. The world plunged into a deep, icy blue. Dressed in black, Alexander stood numbly before a coffin. The servants behind him sobbed quietly. White flowers lay silently upon the lid. Alexander said, Gabriel, are we? Alexander stared at a family in the courtyard. The sight stabbed at his eyes. They widened in pain, his blue pupils constricting violently, as if he were seeing a past he could not bear. Gabriel looked grief-stricken. How many years has it been since I last saw the young master smile like that? He's never laughed so freely again. In memory, that bright smile had long since been buried by time. Worry showed on Gabriel's face. When he comes back, he'll definitely find this whole mess waiting for him. Cold rain trailed down the window pane. The two men stood in silence as anxiety filled the room. Andrea stared at the heavy rain outside. The drops beat against the glass and against his heart as well. He only hoped Alexander would return carrying beautiful memories. Sunlight broke through the clouds and fell over a quiet country villa. Birds sang in the sky. Renee lay in bed as the sunlight gently brushed across her face. She slowly opened her eyes, her lashes trembling faintly. Then she suddenly sat up and looked around the completely unfamiliar room. Where am I? Renee pressed a hand to her forehead as fragments of memory rushed back. Yesterday. Renee. Renee. Alexander's voice echoed in her ears, gentle and urgent. He leaned close and soothed her softly. It's okay, Renee. I'll go slower. Renee weakly pushed against him. No. Don't. Alexander caught her hand, their fingers locking together. Don't move. His grip tightened. Renee cried out in pain. Alexander gazed at her, breathing hard, and praised her softly. You're so beautiful. Renee, so beautiful. Renee let out a scream, clutching her head with both hands, her face burning. What on earth did I do? Alexander's voice came from the doorway. Awake, he entered carrying a tray. Morning light outlined his tall figure, a towel draped casually over his shoulder. Renee hurriedly pulled the blanket up. Wait a second. Alexander set down the tray and leaned closer. What's wrong? Did you get hurt somewhere? Renee clutched the blanket tightly, her cheeks crimson. And no, not that. Alexander let out a sigh of relief. That's good. Are you hungry? I went to the nearby grocery store to take a look. There wasn't much. Renee looked at the food on the tray and asked in disbelief, no way. Did you make this yourself? Alexander turned his head, a confident smile on his lips. Yeah, I can do anything. He leaned close to Renee, blue eyes gleaming. Right? Renee's cheeks instantly turned scarlet. What? How could that possibly? Alexander burst into a bright, hearty laugh. It echoed through the room, sunlight gilding him in gold. And for a moment, it was as if the Alexander from his younger days had returned. Renee stared at him blankly, at that long-lost smiling face, her heart dazed. She reached out and touched Alexander's cheek, her eyes gentle. Ah, this is the Alexander the first remember. Then what is this? If this is who he really is, then what were those cold, distant expressions he wore over the past 2 years? Renee climbed out of bed, wanting to escape. I'm going to wash up. Wait outside. Alexander stared at her in disbelief. You just washed. Why do you need to wash again? When did I wash? Renee shot back in shock. Alexander caught her by the ankle, stopping her. I helped you wash at dawn. Don't you remember? He bent down, a mischievous light flickering in his blue eyes. Or do you want us to bathe together once? Renee's face burned red. Impossible. Get out. She shoved Alexander out the door and slammed it shut with a bang. Covering his face with one hand, Alexander let out a quiet laugh, his shoulders trembling with suppressed amusement. Behind the door, Renee collapsed with both hands over her head and screamed. Alexander fell onto the bed, laughing so hard his whole body shook. Turning onto his side, his blue eyes still full of laughter, he gazed at the lingering warmth left on the sheets. Damn it. Alexander lay on the bed, covering his eyes with his palm, his body trembling slightly with restraint. I'm going crazy. Sunlight filled the stone-paved street, where the crowd bustled back and forth. The bell over the bakery door rang cheerfully. The shopkeeper greeted them warmly. Welcome. Ah, you're the customer from this morning. Did you like the bread you bought? Alexander stood at the counter. Hello. Thanks to you, sir. Breakfast was delicious. Alexander slipped an arm around Renee's shoulders. My wife liked it very much, so I wanted to come by some more for dinner. Do you have any recommendations? An elderly woman pointed at a baguette. Ah, you must be new here. Then buy this baguette. I've been a customer here for 30 years. It's really delicious. She added, it's especially good made into sandwiches. Alexander took the old woman's hand and bent to kiss the back of it. Thank you, madam. Thanks to you, I'll be able to make my wife a delicious dinner. The old woman blushed and excitedly grabbed the shopkeeper's hand. The shopkeeper enthusiastically handed over another loaf. This one is also very good. The old woman then stuffed a basket of fruit into their hands as well. Take this too. Consider it a gift from me. Renee watched the scene unfold. For him, radiating charm was as natural as breathing. The shopkeeper and the elderly woman warmly saw them off. Thank you for your patronage. Please come again. Alexander rode a bicycle, with Renee sitting on the back seat, her arms full of food as they passed through the sunlit streets. Renee lightly tugged at the hem of Alexander's clothes. Alexander, we've even bought dinner already. When exactly are we going back? Alexander turned his head slightly, a teasing look in his blue eyes. What? Do you want to hurry back that badly? Renee's fingers tightened. Not exactly. Feeling the warmth behind him, Alexander suddenly found that he really liked this place. It feels like I haven't properly rested in a long time. And you? Renee's cheeks flushed slightly. Me too. I really like it. She pressed her cheek against his back, feeling the solid warmth of his body and the breeze coming toward them. A smile touched Alexander's lips. I knew you'd say that, so I already made a call this morning. We're staying here tonight. Renee's eyes widened in shock. What? When did you decide that? Alexander didn't answer. He merely stopped the bicycle, leaned down, and pressed a kiss to her cheek. Gazing at Renee with smiling eyes, he said, say it again, that you like it here. Renee's face turned bright red. 3 children standing by the roadside pointed at them. One shouted, you kissed that girl. Another cried out too. She kissed her, just like mommy kisses daddy. Alexander explained gently. I kissed her because she's so pretty. Your daddy must think your mommy is very pretty too. The two children looked at each other excitedly. He said she's pretty. Yes, she is pretty. In a bright room, Nina rushed toward the sofa. Mom, is this true? Did father really leave an inheritance for us? Maggie lifted Nina's face. If you're going to be ruthless to the end. Otherwise, you might as well be a good person. Hesitating will only dig your own grave. Do you understand? Her gaze grew even harsher. If you can't be kind, then you must be cruel. Do you understand? Nina lowered her head, her voice weak. Yes, I understand. Nina raised her head again. But that will. Did father really leave it? Are we really leaving the Chambel family? Maggie's eyes were resolute. We have to leave. There's nothing wrong with greed, but you have to know when to advance and when to retreat. Nina stared at her mother in shock, as if seeing her for the first time. Maggie's voice rang out again. What is it, dear? Nina lowered her head, her tone full of bitterness. Alexander will abandon me. He doesn't pity me the way he used to anymore. If I'm no longer part of the Chambel family. Possessiveness burned in her eyes. Mom, I want him. He has to be mine. I won't let some other woman take him from me. Maggie helplessly patted her daughter's head. What's so great about that gloomy man? Alexander Chambel. The first time I saw him, those eyes of his felt as though they could see right through me. After he lost his mother, he had the eyes of a beast, a frightening, dangerous man. That fire was a fortunate accident. It became a means to keep that filthy temper of his under control. But now even those shackles seemed to have lost their effect. The mother soothed Nina. All right, dear, let's think of another way. You said that girl took the marriage contract too, right? Just a marriage contract. Yet Alexander cares that much about his fake wife. How strange. Nina's hand suddenly tightened. Renee, Keith Lynn, Maggie's gaze sharpened. Melinda, do you still have the things you stole from him? Nina nodded. Yes, most of Renee's things were taken away, but I kept Alexander's things, so they weren't removed. Maggie tapped a finger against her lips. Good, we'll use that. If he cares that much about his wife, then she'll become his weakness. Maggie soothed Nina. I'll take care of everything. You don't need to worry about anything. Go shopping. Nina's eyes lit up instantly. Really? Then I'll trust only you, Mom. With that, she turned and ran off. Maggie was left alone in the room. She picked up a cigar. Honestly, whose temperament did that little idiot inherit? She lit the cigar and took a deep drag as smoke curled around her. Fragments of memory surfaced. Mom, Mom! Young Nina cried out heartbreakingly. Shut up, you useless thing! A man roared. The girl fell to the floor, reaching out in despair. Maggie screamed, You bastard! Flames devoured everything. The searing memory branded itself into her mind. Maggie's eyes turned cold and fierce through the smoke. Fire burned in her pupils. A cold smile curved Maggie's lips. She exhaled a thick cloud of smoke. If it's what my daughter wants, then even if I have to destroy everything, I'll get it for her.